Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Ichigo x Yoruichi x Suì-Fēng x Kukaku. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the FANFICLOVER 2017 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Ichigo was lying in bed going over recent events and his more accurately events surrounding Rukia. He hadn't gone to school that day, neither had Tatsuki or Orihime, but then again none of them had. He had found it amusing thinking about what their schoolmates would say, let alone what the teachers would say when they returned to school. He actually found himself chuckling about it. "Ichigo, what's so funny?" Yoruichi asked. Tatsuki and Orihime turned their heads to look at him, waiting for a response. "Oh, I was just thinking about what kind of hell the teachers, our climates and our friends are going to give us when they find out what we've been doing the last 3.5 weeks. The crazy shit we had to put up with from I was nothing in comparison," he replied. "What do you mean?" Orihime asked. "Yeah, that's a good question. What do you mean, Ichigo?" Tatsuki asked. "I think I know what he means," Yoruichi said. "Oh really, and what exactly do you think I mean?" Ichigo countered. "You mean the unbelievable training that the three of you have been through to go and rescue Rukia. Then again you could mean the copious amounts of extremely hard and rough that the three of us had with you over the last 3.5 weeks. Yoruichi said, emphasizing the words hard and rough just to get her point across. "Well, I guess you could say it was both," Ichigo said with a smirk on his face as he pulled all three of his goddesses into a deep soulful one by one. But what?" all three of his ladies exclaimed. "I find myself thinking about the future, after we rescue Rukia," he replied. "Ichigo," Yoruichi said as she pulled his face towards her so she could look him in the eye. "What you're doing, thinking about the future, is actually very mature, but remember what Orihime and Tatsuki told you when you first got together with them," Yoruichi said. "They said we don't care what the future brings, as long as you're there to share it with us. We also don't mind sharing you as long as we're included." Ichigo gave a smirk. "Wait a minute, how did you know that?" Ichigo asked. "That's easy. I was sitting on a tree branch outside your window watching your first time with Tatsuki and Orihime," she replied with the Cheshire cat grin that she was famous for. "Oh great, I've got a voyeur wee cat for a girlfriend," Ichigo replied. "That wasn't very nice," Yoruichi said as she smacked him with her pillow, to which Tatsuki and Orihime promptly started laughing their fool heads off. When they stopped, she continued. "My point, Ichigo, since you failed to see it, is this: well, thinking of the future is great. If you think about it too much it can and will blind you. Don't stop moving forward, but don't forget about the present either, or the past," she told Ichigo. "You're right, as usual, Yoruichi," Ichigo said. "By the way, shouldn't we be getting ready to leave?" he asked. As he tried to get up, Yoruichi pulled him back down and said, "Stay put, Kisuke will let us know when it's time to leave." The moment those words were spoken, a red balloon came flying into his room through the window and busted on the wall. The moment it did, it started to spell out a message. Ichigo immediately got pissed and said, "That shit better not stain my wall." Yoruichi snickered and thought, "Are you kidding me? After everything the four of us did in this room the last 3.5 weeks, you're worried about a little tomato sauce?" "Ichigo, shut up and pay attention," Tatsuki exclaimed. "Yoruichi-san, Arasawa-san, Orihime-chan, Kurosaki-san. If all of you are done with your rigorous physical activities, then meet at the shop at 10 p.m. the message stated. Ichigo deadpanned and thought, "That looks like someone's dying declaration at the scene of A." The message continued, "P.S. Anyone that sees this and thinks it looks like someone's dying declaration at the scene of A clearly has no taste for comedy," the message ended. "Bastard," Ichigo screamed and threw his pillow up against the message. "Okay everyone, let's get ready to go, then we can sit around and talk till it's time to go," Yoruichi said. After getting ready to go, they all sat around Ichigo's bedroom table where Yoruichi, although she was now in her cat form, had something to say to them. "Okay guys, there's two things I wish to tell you. The first is that as your lover I love all of you dearly. The second is, as one of your mentors I am proud of you all. You did the impossible. You not only learned the basics of and mastered Hakuta, but you learned the basics of Ho-Ho, but you also mastered the cicada technique. Your speed is almost equal to my own. You have also mastered the abilities of Zanpakuto, as well as the sealing and releasing of same. The three of you have also mastered control of your spiritual pressure. I can hardly detect any spiritual pressure coming off you at all, it's almost non-existent. During your training to master the skills we have taught you also helped you learn some as well. The reason you three learned so fast is due to how hard Kisuke and I pushed you. Remember these lessons because I guarantee you they will save your life. But don't think your training is over either. After we save Rukia we will begin again," Yoruichi said. Ichigo said. "Yes, Ichigo," she replied. "How close are we to?" he asked. "How close are we to Bankai?" he asked. I'm not sure Ichigo being able to release Bankai is largely dependent on the individual and that they wield, but considering the level of your spiritual pressure, I would say you're pretty close. But, I suggest you ask your Zanpakuto about it. They may be able to give you more information about it than I can. Yoruichi stated. King, I like her. She's not only smokin' hot but intelligent as well. Hollow Zangetsu said. You think so too, huh? Ichigo replied. Yep, I mean she told you exactly what you needed to know without mincing words, not to mention I may take over just so I can have some fun with her. The Hollow said. Like hell you are. Ichigo exclaimed. Calm down, King. I was just pulling your leg, lighten up little G's. Anyway, back to the matter at hand, come to your inner world you old man, and I need to have a chat. Hollow Zangetsu said. Okay, give me a minute. Ichigo replied. Yoruichi said. Yes, Ichigo. She replied. Zangetsu says he needs to talk so I'll be in the corner, okay? He said. Alright Ichigo, but be careful, Zangetsu isn't exactly the most easygoing you've experienced firsthand. She lovingly warned him. I know, I'll be careful. Ichigo said. As Ichigo sat down he began to meditate and instantly he felt a pull on his mind. Alright guys, I'm here. He shouted. Old man, the floor is yours. Hollow Zangetsu said. Very well. The old man said. Ichigo, do you remember your training with Kisuke? Zangetsu asked. Yeah, of course I do, not that I haven't tried to forget it. What about it? Ichigo replied. Well then this should be easy. Do you remember the last part of it where you had to release us? Ichigo nodded at this. Zangetsu asked. What we told you then was what Zangetsu said. Flashback. Ichigo, what are you doing? Zangetsu asked. What do you mean this bastard is swinging a sword at me? If I don't run I'm gonna die. Ichigo exclaimed. You shouldn't be running at all, if you had called upon me running wouldn't be needed. My name is Ziyu. The sword in his hand stated. What's that, old man? I didn't catch. Ichigo asked. I see you still cannot hear my name. I grow tired of straining my vocal cords just so you will finally hear my name. Stop running and face your enemy. The enemy is one and you are one, there is nothing to fear, retreat and you will age, hesitate, and you will die now. What is my name? The sword exclaimed. Cut the moon and rage across the heavens, Zangetsu. Ichigo shouted. Urahara-san, please dodge this. I am unable to control it. Ichigo said. Just as the fabric on his right shoulder exploded, Ichigo unleashed his attack. Oh shit. Urahara said to himself. Chikasumi no Tate. Blood mist shield, he called out. After Ichigo's attack was neutralized he was relieved. He looked over to Ichigo and saw that he was pushed out. Kurosaki-san, you are a monster. Urahara said to himself. Flashback end. Ichigo, do you remember what we told you after you finally released us? Zangetsu asked. Yeah, I am an old man. You said that you weren't my true Zanpakuto, that Shiro was, and that you were only acting like my true Zanpakuto to prepare my body for my true power and potential, because my body couldn't handle the strain otherwise. Ichigo replied. Has something changed? He asked. Yes Ichigo, it has. Your spiritual pressure has increased to the point where your body could handle not only your Bankai, but your true Zanpakuto as well, but you will not be getting either today. Zangetsu stated. What? Why not? Ichigo asked. Because you idiot, neither the old man nor I want the enemy to have prior knowledge of you or your abilities. I will go back inside the old man and you will get your Bankai and Soul Society and your true Zanpakuto after this crisis has been taken care of. But when you do I must insist that you make the old man part of your true Zanpakuto. Trust me, he has some abilities that will come in handy in the future. When Rukia has been rescued, talk to the people in charge and tell them that you will need 3 Asauchis, and before you ask, an Asauchi is a nameless Zanpakuto that is given to and used by each Soul Reaper as a template to create their own unique Zanpakuto. They eat, sleep, and train with them and imprint their soul upon it and thus are able to forge their own unique blade. The Hollow stated. Okay, but why 3, why not just 1 for you? Ichigo asked. That's a good question. Zangetsu said. You may come out now. He exclaimed. Ichigo, these are the other 2 Zanpakuto. Her name is Nejibana and her name is Kori no, but she prefers Kori for short. Zangetsu said. Nejibana, Kori is a. Ichigo said. As it is for us as well, Ichigo. Nejibana said. Please don't mind Kori. She's a bit shy having only just met you, but I'm sure she'll warm up to you. She stated. That's okay Nejibana, when she's ready I'll be here. Ichigo said. Thus then Kori ran up and gave Ichigo a hug, which he returned. Nice to finally meet you, Kori. He said. She just looked at him and grinned. Ichigo, Yoruichi is calling you. We will finish this when you reach the Soul Society. But remember, when you get there, to completely suppress your energy and train with us through every free moment you have. You still have a lot to learn about us and your powers. The Hollow stated. Got it. Ichigo said. Ichigo, wake up idiot. Tatsuki screamed. As soon as he woke they started walking to Kisuke's. Did you have a nice chat with Zangetsu? Yoruichi asked. Yeah, I did. Tell me, Yoruichi, is it normal for a Soul Reaper to have more than one Zanpakuto? He asked. No, why do you ask? She replied. Because I have 3. He said. What? Yoruichi shouted in surprise. Yep, 3 Zanpakuto, and I met the other 2 while talking with Ichigo stated. Really? She said excitedly. What are their names? She asked. About this time they got to Urahara's place and he asked the same question. Well, Ichigo said. One is called Nijibana, and both Yoruichi and Kisuke looked at each other. And the other is called Korino, or Kori for short. He said. Kisuke gave a chuckle and said, Kurosaki-san, you never cease to surprise me, but I'm worried about the Soul Society's reaction when they find out you wield the of a long-dead Soul Reaper. What do you mean, Kisuke? He asked. Well, Ichigo, Nijibana used to belong to Kien Shiba-Rukia's old Fuku Taicho. He was also head of the Shiba clan at the time of his death. Rukia blames herself for his death because she was the one who had to kill him when he was possessed by a hollow. You could give Nijibana to one of the surviving members of the Shiba clan, it would be seen as a noble and meaningful gesture. Kisuke said. I will consider Kisuke, but only if that's what Nijibana wishes. If she doesn't, then she will stay with me. Ichigo replied. Okay, very well, Kurosaki-san, I'm going to borrow Yoruichi-san for a minute. He replied. Kisuke grabbed her and her cat and sped away. You know that he is a Shiba by birth, don't you? Yoruichi asked. Of course I do, Yoruichi-san, but Kukaku and Ganju don't. They might take offense and try to hurt him. Kisuke said. I doubt that, Kisuke. Yoruichi said. Oh, and what makes you so sure about Yoruichi-san? Kisuke asked. Because I plan on having a private chat with both of them when we get there. She replied. Alright, Yoruichi-san, have it your way, but make sure that they know they can't say a word to him until Isen talks to him, okay? That is a talk that only Isen has the right to give him, being his father. Kisuke commanded. Okay, Kisuke considers it done. Yoruichi said. I will try, but I don't know if I can get them to keep their mouths shut. Yoruichi replied. I know you will be, Yoruichi-san. He said. Shall we get this show on the road? He asked. Yes, I think we should. Yoruichi said. Well, everyone, are you ready to go? Kisuke asked. Yeah, we are hat and clogs. Ichigo replied. Well then, let's open the gate to the Soul Society. Kisuke said. Hold it. A loud scream echoed across Urahara's training room. Everyone turned to see Uryu standing there with Chad. Where the hell do you think you're taking Tatsuki and Orihime? Orihime's mine. Uryu exclaimed. With me, of course, why do you care? Ichigo asked. Well, I'm not letting you take them anywhere. Uryu said. Just then, in a burst of speed faster than Uryu could react, he had 3 blades at his dot. You don't get a say in this, Uryu. They are going by choice, not obligation. You had better learn the difference between the two and your place. Ichigo said as a growl crept into him and his eyes started glowing blue. Just then Orihime slapped Uryu across the face. I don't belong to anyone, least of all you. If I do belong to anyone, it's Ichigo, and he belongs to me as much as I belong to him. The same could be said of Tatsuki and Yoruichi as well. Orihime shouted. But Orihime, I thought. Ishida said. You thought about what? Orihime spat out venomously. You thought I liked you as anything more than a friend, much less a lover, to give me a break. She said. Why do I think I left the lights on and the curtains open in Ichigo's bedroom the night Tatsuki and I had with him? She asked. You don't mean, Uryu started to say but was cut off. That's right, Uryu, I knew you were outside the window down on the street watching everything that was happening. I wanted you to see everything so that you would get the point that we may be friends, but I love Ichigo. She said. If you and Sato-kun wish to come with us, you are more than welcome to do so. We could use all the help we can get. She said. However, make no mistake, stick your nose in my business again, and you won't need to wait for Ichigo or Tatsuki to kick you, because I'll beat them to it, understand? She exclaimed. Uryu, look, I know you've had a crush on me for a long time, but I will never return anything more than friendship to you. I'm sure you'll find someone one day, but it isn't me. I have the right to live my life how and with whom I choose, and I won't let you or anyone else get in the way of that. She said as she walked away from Ishida and into the waiting arms of Ichigo. Well, that was awkward. Kisuke said. Are we ready to go now? He asked. He got an affirmative nod from everyone, even Uryu. Well, alright then. He said playfully. Now listen up, everyone. Kisuke said. I can only keep the gate open for 4 minutes, so the minute it opens, everyone gets it. He said. To this everyone nodded. Wait, Kisuke. Ichigo exclaimed. Yes, Kurosaki-san, he replied. How will we know which way to go? Ichigo asked. Because I'm guiding you. There is only one way to go. The minute you jump into the gate, just keep running straight ahead until you come to the exit, then you'll be in the Soul Society. Yoruichi piped up and answered with a playful wink. Alright everyone, I'm opening the gate. Kisuke shouted. Just as he did, everyone jumped in. Yoruichi. Yes, Orihime. What's that coming up behind us? She asked. Shit. It's the cleaner, run for it. If that thing catches us we won't make it to the Soul Society. Yoruichi yelled. Hurry, the exit's just ahead. She exclaimed. We aren't going to make it. Uryu shouted. Just then Orihime put her hands on her head and shouted, Santen Keshin, I reject. Just then 3 flowers came out and formed a shield that pushed everyone harmlessly out of the dot, although the landing wasn't exactly soft. Is everyone alright? Orihime asked. Well, everyone seems alright, she said sheepishly. Alright, ma, Yoruichi shouted as she headed Orihime. Yoruichi, that hurt. The poor girl said as she pouted. Don't you listen to anyone, Orihime. We are alright because it was the shield that touched the thrust. If it had been one of the flowers you'd be dead right now. Yoruichi shouted. Just then everyone looked up. So this is the Soul Society? Ichigo asked. Yes, Ichigo. Yoruichi answered. Normally this place is busier. I wonder why no one's around. Yoruichi thought to herself. Then they got their answer. Off in the distance alarms were heard. Alert. Alert. Intruders in the Seireitei. And it was repeated as they walked towards the entrance to the Court of Pure Souls. The wall came down barring their entrance. Kiryu Hikifune was walking down a long corridor with Misaki Kurosaki close behind. She came to a large set of wooden doors and knocked. Knock. 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 A voice inside said, enter. Excuse me, Your Highness, Captain Hikifune said. Ah. Captain. Hikifune, come in, what can I do for you? The king said, thank you, Your Highness. How are you feeling today, Your Highness? She replied, pretty good. What do I owe you for your visit today? Surely it wasn't to ask an old man how he's feeling. The king asked in return. Well, Your Highness, Misaki Kurosaki and several others have requested an audience with you. Hikifune replied. Very well. Bring them before me. He ordered. Yes, Your Highness. Hikifune said as she briefly left the room. Itachi Shiba, Misaki Kurosaki, Kani Katajiri Ishida, Sakuna Ishida, Candace Catnip, Gerard Valkyrie, Meninas McAllen, Baz B, Askin Naklavar, Bambietta Bastardbean, Jugram Hashwolf, Kang Du, Quil Jopi, Robert Akutran, Grimmy Thumo, Lyle Barrow, Giselle Jewel, Loltata Lampard. Enter and be recognized. The king commanded. Yes, Your Highness. They replied. Why have you requested an audience with me? The king asked. Well, Your Highness, myself, the Shiba clan, the Ishida clan, and the Kurosaki clan would like the remainder of our family brought here. Misaki stated plainly. No. The king exclaimed. But Your Highness, why? Misaki asked with tears in her eyes. Misaki, we have been over this, you will see them when the time is right and it will be sooner than any of you realize. The king replied. What do you mean, Your Highness? Misaki asked. I guess the time is right to inform you all of this. I am dying, the king answered. Shocked gasps were heard around the room. Excuse me, Your Highness. Gerard stated. Yes, Gerard. The king answered. What was the point in liberating us from it, which if you're just going to die, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of such a sacrifice? Gerard asked. Normally I would agree with you, however, I have already chosen my successor. The king answered. If I may ask you, Your Highness, who is it? Gerard asked. I have chosen Ichigo Kurosaki. He replied. A child, Your Highness, but why not one of us? Asked Jugram. The answer is quite simple, Jugram, because I am the very first transcendent being. My powers are so vast that to pee them to anyone except another transcendent being would cause the death of the individual and the destruction of Soul Society, as well as the other dimensions that we watch over. The king said. And you're saying my son is a transcendent being? Misaki asked. Yes, Misaki, he is, thanks to Aizen's selfishness when he created the artificial Lord CL Hollow called White 19 years ago. That Hollow attacked you and transferred his powers and a copy of his soul to you. When Ichigo was born, that Hollow latched onto Ichigo's soul and then combined with both the Quincy powers he inherited from you and the Shinigami powers he inherited from his father Isin Shiba. He is the perfect transcendent being, his powers are perfectly balanced. Your daughters are low-level transcendent beings thanks to them being Quincy Shinigami hybrids. The king stated. Everyone was shocked by the bombshell the Soul King dropped. Now as for when you will see them, it will be as soon as Aizen is exposed as a traitor, they will be brought here. Ichigo will become the crowned prince of the Soul Society at that time, as well as be introduced to his future wives. However, he will not take over my position until he defeats Aizen and takes custody of the End. The king said. Now Gerard, as for why I liberated you and the other Quincy from Iwich, I did it so that you could live your own lives and be ready to help Ichigo fight against Iwich when the time comes. However, there is another great evil in the future that he will have to fight against, and to do that he must be someplace where his training can do him the most good, and that isn't the world of the living. The king said. Can Uwich detect where we are or see this conversation? Gerard asked. The answer is no, his foresight ability doesn't work against me and those under my protection. Although to be safe many years ago shortly before he was born I placed a curse upon him that took away part of his future sight ability and hindered what future events he could see after seeing his future and seeing the horrors he would bring upon the Soul Society, the living world, and the dot. The curse is permanent and cannot be undone. The king stated. Now Candace Catnip and Menina's Macallan, you two have been given a special destiny. The king stated. What would that be, your highness? They asked. You two will become the first of several women I have chosen to marry Ichigo Kurosaki and rebuild the royal family. The king said. Shocked gasps were heard all around the room as the Soul King dropped another bombshell. Your highness? Yes, Menina's. What did you mean the first of several women to rebuild the royal family? She asked. Well, I have chosen 2 Quinces, 2 Arankar, and 9 Soul Reapers. As for why, the reason is that the Soul King has always had several wives at one time. Why do you think the royal palace is so big? However, the more practical reason is that due to the number of dimensions the Soul King looks after, he needs all the help he can get, so the wives of the Soul King assist him in that regard. I am ashamed to admit that there is another reason. The king said. And that would be? Candace asked. It is because my sons and daughters killed all but one of my wives over 3 millennia ago, because I wouldn't retire and give up my power. The only one that survived was Uwich, who was born in the world of the living about 1,300 years ago, but he is just as bloodthirsty and power-hungry as the rest of them. If he is allowed to accomplish his goal, everyone will die, and I don't think you want the blood of over 50 billion innocent people on your hands. I know I don't. The king said. Excuse me, your highness. Yes, Jugram. You used the term all dimensions. What did you by that? Jugram asked. Well, cough, cough, cough. The king began but started to cough. Your highness. Hikfune exclaimed. I'm okay, Kirio, the king said. Yes, your highness. Hikfune replied. Jugram, I'm afraid we will have to discuss that later after you meet my successor. For now I need to rest. The king said. Yes, your highness. Good day to you, sir, Jugram replied. You as well, young one. The king replied. Everyone bowed and left. Masaki, the Shiba clan, and the Kurosaki clan were ecstatic to see Ichigo and his sisters, and so were the former Sternriders. Okay, that plan's a bust. Where to now? Ichigo asked. I know a place, Yoruichi said. I just hope we can find it. What do you mean? Orihime asked. Well, my friend Kukaku has weird tastes in living arrangements. You'll see when we get there. Yoruichi replied. They all walked for about an hour until they came across a small town in the 65th district of the Rukan. They came to a small shop run by an elderly gentleman. Excuse me, sir, do you know someone named Kukaku, and how do we find her? Ichigo asked. Kukaku, you say? Why would Shinigami want to see her? The elderly gentleman asked. We have business to discuss with her. Ichigo replied. They all started into a nice conversation, and Ichigo told him that they needed her help to get into the Seireitei, and the old man just grinned. Well, I can give you her last known location, and 1 or 2 other places she might be, but that is all I can, I'm afraid. The old man said. That's fine, we should be able to find her from there. Ichigo said. The old man started to say as a large commotion was heard outside. You all need to leave her younger brother outside, and he hates Shinigami. The old man said. Oh really? Ichigo said. Well, since he hates Shinigami, I think I'll stick around and teach the punk a lesson. Hey old man, my boys and I need something to drink, Ganju said as he entered, and the rest of his statement died on his. Well, what's this? 3 Shinigami, a beanpole, a freakishly ugly guy, and a cat. What are 3 Shinigami doing in my town? Ganju asked in a venomous tone. Your town? Ichigo said. This town belongs to everyone that lives here, not just you. Ganju punched him in the face and sent him flying across the room for his comment. Ichigo got up with a devilish grin on his face, using flash step, and in a blur of speed sidestepped Ganju and punched him in his ribcage for his disrespect, sending the fool flying out the front door of the building. While Ganju was unconscious, Ichigo went over to him, picked him up by the ankles, and said Kurosaki stone grinder technique, bringing his right foot down on Ganju's balls, grinding them into the dirt with gusto. Ahhh. Ganju screamed as his precious family jewels were being turned into paste under the weight of Ichigo's dot. Ahhh. Ichigo turned and heard Tatsuki and Orihime scream as 2 more men came flying out of the building with the 2 ladies not far behind. What happened? Ichigo asked as he turned to look at 2 of his 3 lovely ladies, came out topless, one arm cupping their bare breast as best as they could, and in the other their Zanpakuto. Ichigo came running up to them in a panic. What happened? He asked. Those 2 idiots came running up to us and ripped off the top half of our shihakusho and began to ours. Tatsuki said. They molested us, Ichigo. Orihime cries out. The look in their eyes told Ichigo all he needed to Well then lady, since they wronged you, I think it's only fair that you give them their punishment, because if I do it, they will not leave here alive. Ichigo said with a hateful blue glow in his eyes, which earned the two on the ground in front of him an evil glare from Totsuki and Orihime that scared the hell out of everyone there except Ichigo and Yoruichi, who was still in her cat form in Ichigo's arms, getting the top of her head scratched. And hey, she can turn into a cat, who's to say she wouldn't enjoy getting her head scratched. Totsuki and Orihime proceeded to beat the shit out of the two that molested them. All anyone from inside the building heard were screams of terror. Totsuki and Orihime had decided to use their as bait to entice them into moving closer. The moment the two idiots did, all hell broke loose, terrifying screams and small explosions was all that was heard, and a few minutes later Totsuki and Orihime came back and dragging their two victims behind them and dumped them in the nearest corner. Orihime then went to the tattered remains of their shihakusho and repaired them using Sotenhun, and then the two ladies proceeded to get dressed. "Anju, where is your sister?" Yoruichi asked. "Who wants to know?" he replied. "I do." Yoruichi replied, "It's me, Yoruichi." "Why didn't you say it was you?" Ganju asked. "Because you were too busy picking an unjust fight with my boyfriend to care," she screamed. "That dandelion head is your boyfriend?" he asked, too busy laughing his off to worry about the consequences. Yoruichi then used her claws to scratch a giant X into his face. Ganju screamed, "What the hell did you do that for?" he asked. "Because you were laughing at something I didn't find the least bit funny. Ichigo is a good man and treats me with the respect I deserve in and out of bed," Yoruichi said. He then looked at Orihime and Totsuki with a lustful gleam in his eyes, which earned him a punch in the face from Ichigo. "Ow. What was that for the dandelion head?" Ganju asked. "Because you were looking at them in a way I didn't like. That's why, also because they're my lovers just like Yoruichi." Ichigo replied, "You should be thankful I didn't handle your friend's punishment after what they did, cause they would probably be dead right now, or at least wishing they were," he said. "Come on, I'll take you to sis," Ganju said. About 30 minutes later. As they walked up to Kukaku's place, they could see two very large gentlemen standing outside. "Halt. What business do you have with Kukaku?" Shiba Shirogane Heiko said. "We are here to see her on a very urgent matter, which is none of your business," Ichigo replied. "Master Kukaku, Soul Reapers approach." Kaganehiko said. "What do they want?" she asked. "They claim to want to talk to you," Kaganehiko said. "Send them away, I have no business to discuss with Soul Reapers," she said. "Yes ma'am," Kaganehiko said. "I apologize, but she doesn't wish to be disturbed," Kaganehiko said. "But just tell her that Yoruichi Shihoin is here to see her," Ichigo said. "Yes of course," Shiraganehiko said. "My lady Yoruichi-sama is here to see you," Shiraganehiko said. "Very well, send her in. I haven't seen my old friend in ages," she said. "Follow me," Shiraganehiko said. "Yoruichi, it's been a while, I trust you can tell me why you're dragging Soul Reapers around with you," Kukaku said. "Hey kid, tell me, why do I look like my dead brother?" she asked, looking right at Ichigo. "I don't know, maybe I'm his reincarnation or something, but as I said, I don't know," Ichigo said. "Kukaku, can I talk to you and Ganju privately for a moment?" Yoruichi asked. "Sure," she responded, and the three of them went to a room in the back. "Okay Yoruichi, what did you want to talk about?" Kukaku asked. "Three things. 1. That boy is Kain's reincarnation. 2. His is carrying Nejibani, your brother's Zanpakuto, which he said he would turn over, but only if she wished it. 3. And most importantly, he is the son of Isen Shiba, your cousin and former head of the Shiba clan, but you are not allowed to tell him that until Isen talks with him about it first," Yoruichi said. "The hell I can't. I'm the head of this family now and I can tell him whatever the hell I want," Kukaku yelled. "No you can't Kukaku, because that is his father's job, not yours. Isen will be coming soon and he will tell him and give you and Ganju the answers to your questions. Keep in mind you only became head because Isen never chose an heir, and that technically still makes Isen head of the clan, and Ichigo is his heir, but he doesn't know that and you are not to tell him to understand," Yoruichi said. "Alright. Now what do you need from me?" Kukaku asked. "We want to use your cannon," Yoruichi stated plainly. Kukaku just grinned and said, "You just love bringing trouble my way, luckily for you I love trouble. Alright, I'll help you get into Seireitei, but first tell me why you're going anyway," she said. "Another Soul Reaper was arrested and about to be wrongfully executed and we want to break her out," Yoruichi said. Kukaku and Ganju began training everyone on how to use the Ryusukaku to make a cannonball, but Ichigo took it a step further and discovered a way to match the energy frequency outside the ball to the energy frequency inside the ball by matching the different frequencies there by keeping them completely stable. Needless to say, both Kukaku and Yoruichi were extremely impressed by this feat of control. "Alright everyone, time for you to depart. The last cannonball leaving for leaves in approximately 45 secs," Kukaku said Kaganahiko, Shirigane Haiko, I'll be using Flower Crane Cannon version 2 Kakizaki. She said yes ma'am. What her only reply. Kukaku, when everything in Aizen makes his move I'll send for you, be ready. Yoruichi said in a low voice, and Kukaku nodded. Alright guys, listen up, when we are about 30 seconds from hitting the barrier let me know. Ichigo said. Why Ichigo? Orihime asked. Because Haim-chan, I am going to synchronize my energy with all of yours, while simultaneously match the frequency of the barrier to push us through safely, so that we don't get separated, and then when we get through the barrier, while everyone is still synced up with me, use flash step to get us when can think up a plan of attack. Ichigo said, and everyone nodded their affirmation. Kukaku started her spell to launch the cannonball, and then all anybody heard was Kukaku-style Flower Crane Cannon version 2 Kakizaki. The ball went up in the air and then stopped, went down a bit, and then rocketed off towards the Seireitei. During this time both Ganju and Ichigo were silently working, Ganju on controlling the cannonball's direction, and Ichigo was focused on synchronizing everyone's energy with his, as well as matching the energy frequency of the ball to the barrier surrounding the dot. The cannonball came into contact with barrier and ped harmlessly through. Everyone on the ground just looked on in utter disbelief, and something no one expected happened. Everyone pulled their power out of the Ryusukaku, allowing it to dissipate, while still connected to everyone via spirit thread. Ichigo performed what he called a synchronize, taking everyone with him. He did not take them far, though they all ended up at the Shihoin clan compound, standing right in front of her parents and Suì-Fēng. Her father Akemi Shihoin and her mother Izami Shihoin, both of whom were overjoyed. To her, Suì-Fēng on the other hand, was furious and attacked Ichigo almost immediately and proceeded to get her kicked for her trouble, while Yoruichi made herself scarce for a few moments to get dressed. Upon returning, put a barrier around the entire compound that cut off any energy signatures, as well as cutting off any signals of surveillance equipment that Aizen may have placed to keep an eye on the Shihoin. Yoruichi then went over to Suì-Fēng to wake her up. Upon doing so, their reunion was not a pleasant one. You betrayed me, Yoruichi, she screamed. Suì-Fēng flashed behind Yoruichi and released her Zanpakuto, stinging all enemies to death. She flashes all around Yoruichi, leaving crests all over her body. This is the end of Yoruichi. Today you die for your betrayal, said as she said as a torrent of white colored exploded around her. You like it? I haven't even had a chance to name this attack yet. I developed this attack all for the sole purpose of killing you, she said. No, you're wrong, it does have a name, Yoruichi said as stretched out her arm and her energy exploded all around her. Suì-Fēng, the name of this attack is called Shunko. Flash cry, do you know why I never taught you this technique? It is because it is too dangerous. I can't quite control it yet either. Yoruichi said. This is impossible, you're 100 years away from the front lines, hiding like a coward should have brought you decay and me power, so why aren't I stronger than you? Suì-Fēng screamed as she charged Yoruichi, only for Suì-Fēng to be stopped by her former mentor with a single hand. Stop this, Suì-Fēng, Yoruichi said as she followed it up with a punch to the gut and a roundhouse kick to the face. Suì-Fēng started moving after Yoruichi's attack. Finally standing up, she asked with tears in her eyes, why did you not take me with you, Yoruichi-sama, as she got on her knees and began to cry. You've gotten stronger since I saw you last, Yoruichi said as she bent down and gave her precious little bee a hug. I've missed you so much, Suì-Fēng, and I am and always have been so proud of you. She said. Yoruichi, I'm going to leave you and Suì-Fēng a chance to catch up while I go create some chaos, see ya. Ichigo said as he and his friends disappeared in a flash of speed. Yoruichi, that boy sure is interesting. Her mother Izami said. Well, he is my boyfriend. Yoruichi replied. Your boyfriend? Her parents and Suì-Fēng exclaimed. Yoruichi answered with a nod. He makes me happy, he's very loving, and he treats me with the respect I deserve. She said with that Cheshire cat grin she was famous for. If you don't mind me asking, who is that boy, Yoruichi-sama? Suì-Fēng asked. His name is Ichigo Kurosaki, but Kurosaki was his mother's name. His father on the other hand is someone we all know. She said. Okay, well, don't leave us hanging. Who is it? Her father asked. His father's name is Isen Shiba. She stated proudly. You mean my old friend Isen is still alive? Her father asked. Well, come on, tell us about the boy. Her mother said. Well, his story isn't a happy one. His mother Misaki was killed by a hollow when he was 9 years old. It happened right in front of him. He doesn't remember much, but what he does remember, or rather what he's told me he remembers, is crawling out from underneath his mother's mutilated body covered in her blood. When he first became a substitute soul reaper, he said he did it to live his life according to the values his mother taught him and to honor her memory, and that is what I know of that incident. However, as a child he was just as sweet and loving as he is now and twice as adorable. His mother and I were very close, and I cried myself to sleep for 3 weeks when she died. Since then, I have spent every free moment I had watching over the boy, and just recently I became his mentor and his lover, along with 2 other very beautiful young ladies. Yoruichi said, by the way mom and dad, I want you to nullify any active engagements I have, as I will be marrying Ichigo after all this crap is over with. She said. Consider it done, dear. Her mother said. Now it's time to tell you the truth of why I left all those years ago and why I've come back now. Yoruichi said, gaining Suì-Fēng's full attention. 110 years ago citizens of the district were disappearing and nobody knew the cause. The head captain decided to send someone to investigate the disappearances, and he chose Shinji Hirako, Lovakawa, Kensei Mugurama, Rijuro Toribashi, Mashiro Kuna, Hiyori Shiragaki, Hachijin Ashoda, and Lisa Yadamaru, the captains and lieutenants of squads 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 12, and the corporation respectively. Once they started their investigation, everything was fine at first, but then everything started going wrong. First Kensei and Mashiro disappeared, and when they were found both of them had already been and attacked the others. During the attack the others themselves started to undergo. This went on for a few minutes until Kisuke and Tessai showed up to subdue them, but they weren't the only ones there. Yoruichi said as she stopped to let Suì-Fēng and her parents process the information. Aizen had been there from the start. He was the one that started the holification experiments and the one who forcefully the others. When Kisuke and Tessai tried to stop Aizen and bring him to justice, he got away and blamed everything on them, which Central 46 believed. Before he fled, Aizen told Shinji that he had been manipulating him from the beginning, using his Zanpakuto's special ability called Kanzen Seimin, or complete hypnosis. We found out later that the release of Kyoka Sujetsu gives Aizen the ability to perfectly control all 5 senses. Once you see its release, you are ensnared in it permanently. When Central 46 found out about what had happened and Aizen's version of events, they were going to kill our friends and exile Kisuke and Tessai, which is what Aizen wanted from the start. You know the whole no lose end shtick. It was then that I made my move. I broke Kisuke and Tessai out of Central 46 custody, rescued the Holofied Shinigami, and fled with Kisuke and Tessai to the world of the living, and that's where we've been ever since. Suì-Fēng, I need you and my parents to understand, I didn't want to leave you or my family behind, it's just that Aizen didn't leave me much of a choice. I either stay with you and watch as my closest friends get executed or exiled, or I leave you behind and do whatever I could to help them, knowing that whatever I did would have its own set consequences regardless. Yoruichi said. I hope you and my parents can now understand why I did what I did. Suì-Fēng and Yoruichi's parents nodded their understanding before Suì-Fēng asked, why don't we go and get the bastard? Because it would be our word against his. As far as the Gate 13 and Central 46 is concerned, he has done nothing wrong. In order for our word to mean anything, he has to come out in the open as a traitor, otherwise you would just be seen as a troublemaker, and if I'm with you, you'll just end up labeled a traitor yourself. Just wait, he will screw up, and when he does it will only tighten the noose around his neck that's been hanging there for over a century. Yoruichi told her. Elsewhere in Seireitei. Ichigo, where are we? Totsuki asked. Not sure, but no time like the present can create a little havoc. Ichigo said with an evil grin. You got it. Totsuki, Orihime, Chad, and Uryu all said an equally evil grin as they went their separate ways. Orihime went with Uryu, Totsuki went with Chad, and I went with Ganju. It wasn't long till we got involved in our first fight. Well, look what we have here. 2 without dance partners. A voice called out. Hey Ganju, look what we have here. A bald idiot and a peacock. Ichigo said. I agree with Ichigo. I wonder if they can fight. Ganju said. The bold reaper got a tick on the side of his head, looked to his partner and said, you take fat and I'll take the carrot top. See you later, Ichigo. Ganju said. Ichigo replied without taking his eyes off of his opponent. Well, let's get this started, the bald soul reaper said as he started to dance around. And this is implied to be a Kaku's Tsuki dance, so I will not be writing the dialogue for it. Well, did you come here to dance or fight? Ichigo asked. Fool. The bald reaper shouted. This is my lucky dance. I don't have time for this. Ichigo said as he groaned and drew his sword. Ichigo brought his sword up and then down so quickly it created a shock wave and a small crater in front of his opponent. His opponent took note of this and decided that the fun and games were over. What's your name? He asked Ichigo. It's proper manners to introduce yourself first before asking for someone else's name. Ichigo responded. My name is Ikaku Madaram, 3rd seat of Squad 11, the Zaraki Corps. He replied. And you? My name is Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo replied. You must be strong as those with Ichi in their names are always strong, capable warriors. Ikaku said. Maybe, but you'll have to find that out for yourself. Ichigo replied. Ikaku drew his sword and brought the pommel and scabbard together and said extend, Hazukimaru. Turning his into a long staff with a red fur-like extension on one end and a 10-inch blade on the other. Ichigo just stared at it incredulously and thought to himself, is that all you got? If it is, this'll a short fight. What's the matter with Ichigo? Are you not going to release her as well? Kukaku asked. I will if you're worthy of it, which remains to be seen. He replied. With this statement Kukaku got a tick mark on the side of his head and promptly attacked Ichigo. Kukaku thrust his blade towards Ichigo, which he dodged, and in turn gave Kukaku a cut above his left eye, which brought a shocked look to Kukaku's face, causing his to back off. Kukaku then sealed his blade long enough to open the hidden compartment and used the medicine kept within to stop the bleeding on the cut he just received. After the cut had been treated, Kukaku got his mind back on the fight, but this time he didn't re-release his blade as he realized he released too soon, so he decided to change tactics. This time he came at Ichigo with his blade in one hand and his scabbard in the other, thrust his blade at Ichigo, which Ichigo dodged again, only to have Kukaku use his scabbard to give a strong thrust to Ichigo's solar plexus, briefly knocking the wind out him. Kukaku then took action and decided to try to go for the death blow and take off Ichigo's head, but all he heard was a loud clang. As their two blades connected, he realized that Ichigo had blocked the strike rather easily. Ichigo looked up at Kukaku and thought to himself, alright, that's it. I have officially had enough of this bald moron. Ichigo flexed his and said, cut the moon and rage across the heavens, Zangetsu. The released form of Zangetsu was in the form of a kyber knife with no guard, a red hilt, and curved inward at the tip, and the way his Shikai looked during the Fullbringer arc. This gave Kukaku pause, and he released his Zanpakuto again, only this time attacked Ichigo with the pommel first, which was caught by Ichigo barehanded. Shocked by this, Kukaku thrust the blade at Ichigo, which again was dodged by Ichigo, and Kukaku said split Hazukimaru, causing the once one-piece staff to become a trisection staff. As the blade whipped around to meet Kukaku's chosen target, which was Ichigo's right eye, Ichigo just smiled and caught the blade between his thumb and index finger. Kukaku looked at him in shock and said, how can you do that? No one has ever caught Hazukimaru's blade bare-handed before. Well, I guess that makes me special then. Ichigo said with a smirk. After this, Ichigo cut Hazukimaru in half at the midpoint and then brought Zangetsu down on Kukaku's right side, leaving a long slash that went all the way from his right collarbone to the right side of his groin. Just when Kukaku thought Ichigo was done, Ichigo gave him an extremely powerful open palm thrust to the gut, sending Kukaku flying into a building 25 feet away, knocking him out. When he awoke, he saw that his wounds had been treated, although he couldn't move, and Ichigo was sitting there holding his Zanpakuto. Give it back. Kukaku screamed. Oh, relax would you, I'm not going to steal your blade, I have one my own that I'm very happy with. Ichigo replied. He said one because he didn't want anyone knowing that he had 3 Zanpakuto, at least not until Aizen was dealt with. Then what do you want? Kukaku asked. I just want to know where Rukia Kichiki is. He replied. The death row inmate? Kukaku asked. Yeah. Ichigo replied. Why do you want to know? Kukaku asked. Because I owe her and that's all you need to know. He said. Fine. Do you see that white tower over there? That's where she is, in the cell 4 deep. Kukaku said. Thanks, Ichigo replied. DCH, whatever. Kukaku replied. Ichigo, who is the strongest member of your group? He asked. That would probably be me. Why? He asked. Then you would do well to watch out for my captain, for he will want a good fight from you. Kukaku said. What does he look like? Ichigo asked. It doesn't matter, just know that he will seek you out. Kukaku replied. See you later, Kukaku Madaram. Ichigo replied. Buryu Pav. Buryu and Orihime were walking around trying to decide what to do when the question was answered for them. You might as well come on out. I know you're their Shinigami. Buryu spat venomously. My, and after all the trouble I went through to hide to observe the two of you, you just had to go and ruin it. Oh well, get them. The Soul Reaper shouted. As the Soul Reapers got closer, Uryu blasted some of them with arrows and missed quite a few others. Oh well, you idiot, served your purpose. I have no need for incompetent morons who can't follow orders, the Shinigami said as he pulled out a device and pushed it on. But Captain Kurasuchi, you said Buom. Ah, living bombs can be so useless sometimes. Oh well, there's more where they came from. Captain Kurasuchi said. Lucky Orihime was there as she was quicker on the draw than the captain as her Kessen protected her and Uryu. Ah, what's this, Quincy? I am not interested in, but you woman I will take with me, you are going to be my new lab rat. I know I'll keep drug testing to a minimum and do my best to keep you whole and not dissect you. What do you say, woman? I've already dissected over 2,600 Quincy, so I don't think I could gain any more knowledge from them, but you're different. The captain said. I'm afraid I will have to decline your oh so generous offer. Orihime said as she released her Zanpakuto. Burn everything black, Kasai no Oho. Princess of Fire, Anne. Her rejection powers combine with her not her. I have done this for a reason, it has to with a bombshell I'm going to drop later on after this chapter, but her will have the word rejection in it, but it will still be fire based. The blade was unique among fire types and Paktu as it got longer and was white hot. The temperature of the blade was just over 1100 degrees, and fire was all around Orihime. She didn't even blink. To her it was like a day at the beach, and Uryu didn't really feel it either because she was protecting him from it. The blade was 52 inches long, white hot with hints of burnt orange. The guard was in the shape of fire and consisted of the different colors that fire takes on: white, blue, green, orange, and red. The hilt was red-orange with a chain attached to the pommel and a small ball of red fire at the end of the chain. To say that Uryu was impressed would be an understatement, but decided to ask her about it later. For now he thought it best to put all his attention on the fight ahead of them. Just then Kurisuchi's lieutenant jumped at Orihime in an attempt to take her away, but Orihime dodged her and landed a quick strike to her gut and sent her flying into a nearby building. With the lieutenant out of the way, they could focus on their real opponent. "What did you mean when you said you experimented on 2,600 quincies?" Uryu asked. "I meant just what I said," Kurisuchi replied. "Now that you've gotten rid of my useless lieutenant, I guess I have no choice but to fight you myself. Tear off, Ashisogi Jizo," he said as he released his Zanpakuto. "If you must know, Quincy, I'll show you this picture of my last specimen." He just went on and on, calling out the name of his student or grandson until I finally put him out of my misery. "I can't remember the name of the student though," Kurisuchi said as he tossed the picture at Uryu. Uryu's eyes went wide at the picture and his increased dramatically. This surprised the captain standing in front of him, as he didn't think this level of power was possible for a Quincy. "Do you want to know the name of his student?" Uryu asked. It was Uryu Ishida. This man was Soken Ishida. "He was my teacher and my grandfather. Today you die, Shinigami." Uryu removed his glove and was engulfed in a movie wave of, and when everything calmed down he was standing before his friend and the captain in Quincy's final form. Uryu drew his bow and fired a single arrow. The captain dodged by jumping up, and he found Orihime there waiting for him. With a single slash of her blade, she sent him flying back about 100 feet with a pitch black mark on his blade, where he tried to block the strike. Uryu was waiting for him. He fired a final arrow more powerful than anything he'd ever fired before. Upon contact with Kurisuchi's body, it blew off the entire top half of his upper body from the middle of his up. But the fight over, Orihime came over and stabbed her blade into Kurisuchi's and said, "Shinsei Nihai no Maism Sacred Ash Burial." The fire on her blade became coal black and turned what was left of Kurisuchi's body into a pile of smoldering ash. Orihime then sealed her blade and she and Uryu left. "Orihime, go find the others, I'm sure they could use your help," Uryu said. "What about you? You're not looking so good," she asked. "I'll be fine. I won't be able to move normally for a while, and the others need your help more than I do right now," Uryu replied. "Alright Uryu, but be careful," she replied. "I will," he said. And Orihime left. Some time later Uryu was walking aimlessly through when he came upon another captain. "I am sorry, young one, but for the sake of peace I must eliminate you. Cry, Suzumashi," the captain said. When Uryu awoke he was in a holding cell in the 4th squad with his suppressed. "I wish they knew that these suppression cuffs weren't needed. After my last fight I no longer have any powers," Uryu thought. Ichigo Pav. Ichigo was walking towards the White Tower when he came upon a staircase going up and discovered that someone was waiting for him. "Hello Renji Abarai," Ichigo said. "You remembered my name, I'm honored," Renji said. "Don't be, I always remember the names of morons whose eyes I've kicked or will kick," Ichigo said as he drew his blade. "Tough talk thief, now let's see if you can back it up," Renji replied as he drew his own blade. "Roar. Zabumaru," Renji screamed as he released his blade. "You should know that my power in the living world was nothing compared to here," Renji further elaborated as his continued to increase. "Is that so? Well then allow me to educate you on the true nature of power," Ichigo said. Meanwhile back at Shihoin Manor. "Yoruichi-sama, how much did you teach Ichigo and the other two ladies?" "I couldn't even sense their." Suì-Fēng said. "Well, they've mastered control, Zanjitsu, Hakuta, learned the basics of Ho-Ho and mastered the cicada technique. They've also mastered up to mid-60s, as well as mastered all the abilities of their." Yoruichi said. Suì-Fēng and her parents were shocked. "What?" they all said at the same time. "Yoruichi dear, you didn't tell us they were that talented," her mother said. "You didn't ask," Yoruichi said with a grin. "Fair enough," her mother replied with a chuckle. "I've got another surprise for you. Their speed is almost equal to my own, and that's when they're wearing a genjutsu. I have no idea how fast they are now that they're not wearing them," Yoruichi said. "And? A genjutsu is a heavy steel sash worn under clothing for training purposes. Suì-Fēng is seen using one in episode 276 of the anime when she released her bankai, although she wore it to keep her stable after firing said bankai. The look her parents and Suì-Fēng gave her was hilarious, as it looked like their eyes would pop out any minute. "Wait a minute, you had them wear a genjutsu while they were training with you, were you trying to kill them?" her mother asked. "Mom, of course not, but I figured since it worked with, why wouldn't it work with them?" Now if you'll excuse me, I've got students to start rounding up. Yoruichi said. Yoruichi, no matter what happens, know that we are proud of you. Your father and I also wish to inform you that the prior engagement to your former fiancé will be voided upon your return. Although he will not be happy about it, he and his family will probably challenge Ichigo for your hand, but as talented as Ichigo is, I doubt either of you have anything to worry about. I will also inform Yushiro and Yukina that you have returned to us. Your little brother and sister have been so worried about you. Her mother told her. Thanks, Mom. And with that she disappeared. Back to Ichigo and Renji. Roar. Zabumaru. Renji screamed as he released his blade. You should know that my power in the living world was nothing compared to here. Renji further elaborated as his continued to increase. Is that so? Well then allow me to educate you on the true nature of power. Ichigo said. At the moon and rage across the heavens, Zangetsu. Ichigo said as he was released. Now Renji could truly see and feel the difference between them, and he didn't like it one bit. I came here to save Rukia from an unjust fate, Renji, and if you don't get out of my way I will kill you. Ichigo said as his eyes began to glow. His declaration made Renji very angry, and he said, save her from an unjust fate. She's in this situation because you stole her powers and wouldn't give them back. She's going to be executed because of you. Renji screamed. By this time Ichigo had enough of Renji's selfish bullshit and disappeared in a burst of speed, only to have Renji to attack him. Renji attacked over and over again, only to have Ichigo dodge and try to get inside his range. As long as you still have powers, she will never regain hers. Renji shouted. Regain her powers. Ichigo said with indignation. Let's get a couple of things straight, Pineapple. 1. There isn't any point in Rukia regaining her powers since you're trying to kill her, and 2. I didn't steal her powers, she gave them to me to save my little sisters from the hollow that injured her in the first place. Ichigo said while mentally counting the number of Renji's attacks. Nice try, Ichigo counted the number of attacks, too bad it didn't work. Renji said as he extended Zabumaru again. Ichigo caught Renji's blade and said, well, I guess the fight is now over, Renji. My teacher told me about counting attacks to look for weaknesses in the defense of my opponents. I guess it didn't work with you. He also told me 1 or 2 other things. Raising his blade above his head he said, when you dodge don't let yourself be cut, when you protect someone don't let them die, and when you attack kill. He said, bringing his blade down against Renji. The shockwave of the swing not only sent Renji into the brick wall behind him, but also shattered Zabumaru in the process. Ichigo approached Renji to make sure he wasn't dead, which he wasn't, but as he turned to leave he felt a hand grab his ankle. He looked down at the hand and realized it was Renji. Ichigo bent down to see what Renji wanted and instead was pulled down by his Shihakusho. You gotta save Rukia, promise me you will, she is my best friend. I want your word to swear on your soul that you'll save her. Renji said. That's why I'm here, but yes, I swear on my soul that I will save her. Ichigo said, and with that Ichigo sealed his Zangetsu and left headed for his next fight. Ichigo started walking up a staircase and began to feel like someone had a blade at his. It was the most intense feeling of killing intent he'd ever felt. Are you the one? A voice from the darkness asked. I am. You must be the captain that Kukaku warned me about. Ichigo said. I am captain of Squad 11 Zaraki Kenpachi, and you must be Ichigo Kurosaki. Captain Zaraki said. Ichigo Zangetsu said, gaining Ichigo's attention. Zangetsu, what's up? Ichigo asked. Kori wishes for you to use her for this next fight. Zangetsu said. Are you sure? You and Shiro told me to hide my true abilities, so wouldn't this kind of be like advertising them for the whole world to see? Ichigo asked, unsure of whether or not to follow Zangetsu's advice. Ping just does it. You said you trusted us, so do what we say, besides it's not like Aizen can really do anything about it, even if he is watching you. Shiro said. Alright, but no more calling me King Zangetsu. Ichigo is how I prefer to be addressed and understood. Ichigo said. Zangetsu's hollow half just smiled and said, alright Ichigo, I can do that. And with that Ichigo swapped out Zangetsu for Kori, who had a big grin plastered all over her face, as she was eager to please her wielder and show him what she could do. Ichigo drew Kori from her sheath and said, freeze, Kori no Ryu. Ichigo noticed a difference right away. He felt an overwhelming amount of power from her release, far more than he ever felt from Zangetsu's. Noticing his wielder had a lot of questions, both sides of Zangetsu decided to give Ichigo the answers he sought. Ichigo, the reason why Kori's release is so much more powerful than mine is because in terms of sheer power, she is by far the most powerful ice-type Zanpakuto in Soul Society history, also because my hollow half and I have been limiting the amount of power that is available to you. However, when you gain access to my true form after the forging, the power of my release will be equal to or greater than Kori's. But for now we need to make sure that no one detects my hollow half until you gain and to forge my true blade, because by then all anyone will feel is Soul Reaper powers, regardless of what I am. So until you train for Yusukori, I know she would like to show you what she can do. Zangetsu said. What type of Zanpakuto are you, Zangetsu? Ichigo asked. I am the most powerful melee attack type Zanpakuto. No Zanpakuto of the same type could ever hope to match my power in combat, which is why your last two opponents lost to you so shamefully. Now pay attention to your current fight instead of talking to me. Hollow Zangetsu said. Looking at Kori's release, he could feel the prideful grin she had on her face, but the thing that shocked him the most was what she looked like now that she was released. The handle of her release was an ice blue colored staff about 5 feet tall, with an ice blue colored dragon at the top that had a blue and silver two-tone blade coming out of the dragon's mouth. The blade itself had a nasty looking inward curve towards the tip, which Ichigo instantly took a liking to. Casting his gaze to the end of the staff, Ichigo saw that it had a silver point at the end that had a long ice blue chain going from the tip and was fastened to the lower jaw of the dragon at the top of the staff. Okay Kori, here we go. Ichigo said. Okay Ichigo, let's make this meathead think twice about fighting you. Kori said. Kori, I do believe that is the first time you've ever spoken to me. I always wondered what your voice sounded like. Ichigo said. I didn't speak until now because I didn't have much that needed to be said. Kori said. Fair enough. Ichigo said with a smirk. Have you done daydreaming yet, Ichigo? Zaraki asked. Yes, sorry about that, I was having a conversation with my Zanpakuto and I got a little too involved with it. Ichigo said. That's quite alright Ichigo, but I would suggest you pay attention. Zaraki said. Ichigo's eyes glowed blue as he got into his fighting stance. He decided to start this fight off with a bang. Ichigo banged Kori on the ground and said SM Menseki TMKETSUN. Total area freeze, the technique froze the battlefield entirely including Zaraki, which brought a smile to Ichigo's face. Ichigo promptly used a silver point at the end of the staff and struck Zaraki in with such force that it not only shattered the ice shell around Zaraki and sent him flying into the tower behind him, it also shattered all the ice on the battlefield. Ichigo walked up to Zaraki to check on him. His injuries weren't life-threatening, but he was unconscious. Yuichiro walked up to Ichigo and asked, is Kenny okay? Yes, he's just fine. The force of the strike cracked or broke almost all of his ribs, but he's fine, although he will be in a lot of pain for a while. He told her. That's okay, Kenny's been through worse and come back from it, being hurt is better than being dead. Yuichiro said. Ichigo chuckled, patted her head and said, that's a real little one, now I suggest you take him to some place to get checked out so he can rest. Okay Ichi, the little pink-haired lieutenant said as she picked him up and disappeared. Ichigo. Ganju shouted, getting his attention. Yeah. He responded. You beat Zaraki? Ganju asked. Yeah, I sent him packing, but I doubt he'll be fighting for at least a week. Ichigo replied. Ichigo. Yoruichi exclaimed as she gave him a warm embrace. I don't believe you beat Zaraki Kenpachi without even trying, she said. How did you know that? Ichigo asked. I had a front row seat to your fight, I'm so proud of you. But we have to go. You've got training to do and not a lot of time in which to do it. She said. Why, what's going on, Yoruichi? Ichigo asked. Central 46 changed Rukia's execution date, it's in 5 days, and we have a lot of work to do. She said. Alright, let's go. Ichigo said. Yoruichi led them to a cave beneath Sakyoku Hill where she and Kisuke would play as children and later trained as adults. Now then, Ichigo training takes 10 years of training even for the most talented, and before you say anything, I am aware that we don't have that long, so through an entirely different method I'm going to have you attain in 3 days. This is a training tool called Shintai. It's used by the stealth force for training, and it is how you will obtain dot, she said as she held up a doll. Ichigo trains with Kori and I4, but first Nejibana wishes to materialize to say something to you. Hollow Zangetsu said. Just then Nejibana materialized in front of Ichigo, Ganju, and Yoruichi. Ichigo, you said that I could leave and go back to the Shiba family if I chose to do so. Well, I have chosen to do just that, but I do not want you to think that I do not want to be with you. I have decided to do this because I still have a very strong bond with a member of the Shiba family, and I wish to be bonded with her. The look on your face tells me you already suspected this, didn't you? She said. Yes, I did. I could tell by the large smile on your face when we met Kukaku, you loved her as much as your previous wielder, didn't you? Ichigo replied. Yes Ichigo, I do, don't get me wrong, I love Ganju just as much, however my bond with Kukaku is far stronger. When Kukaku was younger she was a member of the 13 court guard squads, more specifically squads 1-8. During an operation she was caught in a fight alone with a renegade Soul Reaper whose Zanpakuto had a unique ability, it could destroy another Soul Reaper's Zanpakuto the minute it was released, and in that fighter Zanpakuto Imegamin. Thunder Goddess was destroyed, all that's left is that blade she carries with her. Even the properties that make up a Sauchi were stripped from the blade. If that wasn't bad enough to add insult to injury, the bastard cut off her arm and destroyed it as well with, after that her career as a Soul Reaper was over. Nejibana explained. You need not explain your decision any further, Nejibana. I will gladly transfer you to Kukaku as soon as all this nonsense is cleared up. Ichigo said. Why not right now? Kukaku said as she, Orihime, Totsuki and Chad stepped out from behind the rock face. Ichigo noticed right off that Kukaku was carrying and her arm was healed. He immediately walked up to Orihime and gave her a warm embrace. Alright Nejibana, you already have my permission, so do what you need to. However Kukaku, before you do anything you should know that during my intermittent training here in Soul Society, I have been funneling a small portion of my energy into Nejibana, so be warned, she will be stronger than you remember, so don't be surprised. Ichigo said. Kukaku nodded and said good, maybe the bastard that took my arm and those like him will think twice before challenging me in the future. Nejibana walked around behind Kukaku and asked her if she trusted her and if she would accept her completely, and Kukaku answered yes to both. Nejibana then ran Kukaku through with her blade. The minute she did this, we all heard Kukaku speak Nejibana's release command, surge waters in heaven, Nejibana. The minute she was released, the in Kukaku's hand changed and we got a glimpse of the true form of Nejibana's blade. It was a long blue staff in the form of a trident. Afterward we all congratulated Kukaku and Nejibana, and then Totsuki, Orihime and I all began our Bankai training. It turned out that we were all a great deal closer to Bankai than we thought. Ichigo was closer to Bankai than he thought, but so was Kukaku with Nejibana. In fact, Nejibana gave Kukaku her Bankai the moment she was released. Ichigo mastered Zangetsu's Bankai within a day, and Kori's 2 days later. Kukaku also mastered Nejibana's Shikai and Bankai within a day and a half. Orihime and Totsuki mastered Bankai 3 days after Ichigo mastered Zangetsu's, and they all made to the execution ride on time. Execution grounds. Just as the Sakyoku was about to pierce Rukia's, Ichigo appeared between it and her. A few seconds after Sakyoku made contact with Zangetsu, there was a movie explosion. Everyone looked up where the Sakyoku was supposed to be and saw nothing except Ichigo and the smoking blade of Zangetsu. It turns out that the Sakyoku had used Zangetsu as a medium to gain access to Ichigo's soul, for she had chosen him as her master, but not because she saw something in him, it was because her sister had held Ichigo in place so she could. Her sister was none other than Kori no Ryu, Ichigo's own ice type Zanpakuto. The Sakyoku, or Kiku as Ichigo was about to find out, didn't want to be the execution tool of the Soul Society anymore, she wanted to be with her sister. Ichigo turned back to look at Rukia and said, it's been a while, hasn't it? You fool, I told you I didn't want you coming after me, I told I'd never forgive you if you did. Rukia shouted. Yeah, whatever. You're getting rescued whether you like it or not. From now on all your opinions are rejected. Ichigo exclaimed. That's no way to rescue somebody. What kind of tyrannical hole rescues someone like that? The rescuer isn't supposed to disregard the opinions of the person being rescued. Rukia screamed. Oh shut it, you're the damsel in distress, and you're supposed to be all my heroes here to save me, Ichigo said. Save me, I am no damsel in distress. Rukia yelled. Are you done, boy? The old man down below asked. I haven't even started yet. Ichigo said as he fired off a low-powered Jutsuga directly in front of the old man. The old man drew his sword, and Ichigo said, don't bother, old man, my business right now is with Byakuya Kichiki, but I'll be more than happy to take you on later. In fact, after I kick him you can consider yourself next. The old captain bristled at this as no one had ever spoken to him like that. This young man is either very strong or very stupid. The old captain thought. I see Kiku found herself a wielder. The old captain said. Ichigo, thank you for letting my sister in. I haven't seen her in ages. Kori said. You're welcome, Kori, I hope you'll tell her about me and make introductions later. Ichigo replied that Kori gave him a big dumb grin, as if to say duh. I guess you could say Kiku found a new wielder, old man, she wanted to be with her sister after all. Ichigo exclaimed. The old man's eyes went wide at this. You mean Kiku has a sister blade? The old captain asked. Ichigo nodded and said yes, I wielded her when I defeated Kenpachi. Everyone was shocked by the young man's admission. Just then a large commotion was heard and everyone turned to see that Renji was the cause. Rukia? He shouted. Renji, I'm so glad you're alive. Rukia replied. Hey Pineapple, you finally showed up, I was beginning to wonder. Here, catch. Ichigo yelled as he threw Rukia down to Renji. Ichigo, you bastard lunatic. Renji and Rukia yelled together. What would you have done if I'd dropped her, you moron? Renji yelled. I would have killed you. Ichigo replied with a kidding smirk. Now get out here, take her away from here, that's your job now, and don't let her go even if it kills you. Ichigo yelled down to Renji. Little did Ichigo know that Suì-Fēng and Yoruichi's parents had already talked to the head captain about what had transpired at the manor privately, and he wasn't surprised. In fact, he had suspected something along those lines, but with Central 46 blocking his investigation attempts all these years, he couldn't do anything. He also knew that the young man standing before them all was the son of Aizen Shiba, but he chose to keep that bit of information to himself for the time being. Renji turned to run, and Suì-Fēng took this opportunity to play her hand. All lieutenants after them, she ordered. And Ichigo took off after the lieutenants, and a few seconds later appearing in front of them out of the way, Lieutenant Amida of the 2nd Squad ordered before releasing his crush, Jujetsuburi, and Ichigo promptly did just that by putting his fist through the end into Amida's stomach. The other lieutenants released their blades as well and quickly received an open palm thrust to the gut and chin respectively, instantly knocking them out just in time for Ichigo to turn around, grab his blade, and block a strike from Captain Kichiki. "I can see through your moves, Byakuya Kichiki," Ichigo said. "I can see through your moves, Byakuya Kichiki," Ichigo said. "Why did you come here, boy?" Byakuya said. "I came to save a friend of mine that you plan to execute for doing nothing wrong. She also happens to be your sister," Ichigo said. "Speaking of whom, why won't you lift a finger to save her? She's your little sister, protecting her is your job after all." "Ridiculous feelings for loved ones. I never had such feelings to begin with," Byakuya said. Ichigo couldn't understand what he was hearing. The selfishness coming from this man's mouth was appalling to him. "I guess you were never really worthy of her, Hasana-san," Ichigo spat back, which seriously pissed off the man in front of him, even though he didn't show it. "It seems further talk will be fruitless, let's go," Byakuya said as his began to rise and the clash of titans began. The other captains still on the hill just stood and watched the battle until Byakuya had enough and decided to end it quickly. "Scatter, Sanbansakura," the squad 6 captain said as he sent his attack straight at Ichigo. The captain saw nothing but a bright blue flash and then saw that all of Byakuya's blades were knocked from the sky and their colleague was bleeding. "I will tell you now, Byakuya Kichiki, if you don't use your you will have zero chance against me," Ichigo declared, much to the surprise of the other captains. "Flotsam like you are 1,000 years too early to die by my dot," the captain said. "That's too bad, I was really hoping to get a real workout from this, but oh well," Ichigo said. "You speak as though you have attained already," the captain said. "That's right," Ichigo replied as he disappeared and reappeared effortlessly, getting inside the captain's guard. Byakuya had but seconds to raise his to block the strike of Ichigo's blade, only to be sent back 100 yards from the impact, while Ichigo just stood there with an evil grin on his face. This shocked the other captains, who just disappeared to go to their own battles. "Do you get it now? I suggest you use your otherwise, well, I'm sure you get my meaning," Ichigo said. "Very well, boy, but after I kill you I will once again track down Rukia and my worthless lieutenant and execute them both," the captain said. "You're gonna kill me and then kill your own sister, my you are," Ichigo exclaimed. "My power exists to keep narrow-minded piss ants like you from doing selfish things like that, so after I kick you, I will drop what's left of you in front of Rukia and Renji and make you beg for their forgiveness," he said. This statement agitated the captain even further. The glaring lack of respect the boy showed him was infuriating. Byakuya just glared at the boy with anger and hatred in his eyes, dropped his sword blade first as it disappeared into the ground, and said, "Bankai." Zanpakuto Keiji Ashi as 2 rows of 50 swords arose from the ground and then immediately scattered into millions of pink flower petal-like blades that came down on Ichigo, leaving him cut up and bleeding in the crater left by the attack. "Tough talk is all your boy, what happened to your bravado? Your talk of having is nothing more than a joke. I like you having, the thought of it not only tramples upon the pride of the Gate 13, but also makes me sick," Byakuya spat venomously. "Well then, get ready to empty your stomach, you arrogant old man, cause here it comes. By the way, when did I ever say that I only had one?" Ichigo spat in return. "Ahhh," Ichigo screamed as his increased dramatically. "What is going on here that no mirror could ever achieve? It's inconceivable that he could have. The amount of energy he is releasing is also not possible for a mere human to generate, none of this makes any sense. Bankai is the pinnacle of Soul Reaper combat, those said to be able to achieve it only come along once, maybe twice in a generation, yet this boy claims to possess 2, but I do not see another blade aside from the one he is using," Byakuya thought. Just as he was wrapping up his internal monologue, Ichigo had finished building up his energy and yelled Bankai. Byakuya was engulfed in a blast of energy from his opponent's blade, and a large tornado of dirt and debris arose from the ground to meet the sky. When everything calmed down, all that was left was the boy. An energy wave pulsed the boy's blade and blew away all the dirt that had been kicked up. Ichigo stood there and said, "Tensa Zanjetsu." Byakuya noticed instantly that his appearance had changed, as did his blade. Ichigo's shihakusho had changed, now it was a long coat with 3 tails in the back, the front was open with a white undershirt and 3x going down the front, his arms were completely covered now with white bone-like coverings on his forearms with black underneath white palms, and the backs of his hands were covered black. His blade was the most dramatic change, it was completely black, and now the size of an adachi about 66 inches, the guard had 4 nasty-looking protrusions, forming what looked like a swastika, and the blade itself had a small hollow opening in the middle from the guard to about 16 inches into the blade. The blade also had an upward curve on the primary cutting edge and an inward curve on the secondary cutting edge that started at the tip and went halfway down the spine with several sharp ridges in the middle. The hilt also had a long chain about 2/3 the length of the blade and was attached to his arm. An Fullbringer arc Bankai style. When Byakuya saw it, he was pissed as he thought the boy was mocking him, as no Shinigami ever had it that small, but he couldn't deny the power and the sheer density of the boy was emitting. It feels raw and oppressive. I can see that you have quite a fondness trampling upon our pride. It doesn't matter if it's the or the execution. What you have there is not it, no is or ever has been that small. Byakuya said. That pride thing that you all seem to be so proud of seems to be linked with killing Rukia and Renji, so yeah, I'll trample all over that shit if that's what it takes for you to take your head out of your dot, Ichigo said. Very well, Ichigo Kurosaki, I shall carve into your body the lesson of what price is paid for soiling another's pride. Byakuya said. The captain initiated his attack and sent all his blades towards the upstart brat in front of him when Ichigo just disappeared, only to reappear a few seconds later with the tip of his blade pointed at Byakuya's dot. He was confused when Ichigo backed away. Boy, you could have ended, then why did you back away? Byakuya asked. After everything you've done to your sister, I want you to suffer, and the best way to accomplish that is for you to live with the fact that a 16-year-old boy kicked you. Ichigo replied. Ichigo kept chipping away at the captain's tolerance and self-control until he finally just exploded. Very well, boy. We shall see which one of us is the victor. The captain spat. Byakuya sent his blades at Ichigo once more, only for Ichigo to dodge and use his speed to create clones of himself all around Byakuya. What is this speed of his? Sanbonsakura cannot keep up. Byakuya thought. What's the matter, an old man having trouble keeping up here? Maybe this will make things easier for you. Ichigo said and just disappeared. Byakuya was looking around and saw nothing until he heard a voice say, you honestly didn't think that a student of Yoruichi Shihoin would be caught off guard by your pathetic technique, did you? Ichigo was moving so fast that anyone other than Yoruichi would be unable to follow his movements. Come out and face me, boy. Byakuya screamed. As you wish. Ichigo said as he appeared in front of the irate captain. You should pay attention, Ichigo Kurosaki, you are the second person to see the true form of you will not be leaving here alive. Byakuya said. Why thank you whole, I'll be sure to remember that. Ichigo said. Byakuya suddenly got a murderous grin of his face and said Senkei, Sanbonsakura Keijiashi. The fight between the two Shunpo masters began in earnest. Ichigo got a suggestion from the hollow side of Zangetsu. Ichigo threw 3 Jutsuga Tenshu at him simultaneously, got in behind him and launched one point blank. Ichigo did as his Zanpakuto suggested and watched as his opponent stumbled back bleeding heavily. Byakuya then asked the boy, Ichigo Kurosaki, why do you care so much about my sister? Let me ask you a similar question. Why wouldn't you save your own sister? Ichigo asked. Defeat me and I will answer your question. Byakuya said. Just then all the blades around them began to coalesce into the blade in Byakuya's hand. Sanbonsakura Kageashi, Shukei, Yukitenkan. Byakuya said as large white wings and a halo made of pure white energy sprung forth. Wow, that's pretty cool, Byakuya. I guess I'll have to show you one of my techniques now. Tensa Zangetsu, Kuroi no dot, Ichigo said as his hair turned black, his eyes turned blood red, and 2 enormous black wings appeared on his back. And Kuroi no means black moon devil wings. Shall we begin? Byakuya Kichiki? Ichigo asked. The two combatants charged each other and there was a movie explosion. When it was over, the only one of them still standing was Ichigo. Byakuya lay in a defeated heap on the ground, alive but defeated nonetheless. Ichigo Kurosaki told me I would answer your question if you defeated me. The reason why I would go after my sister is because of the law. I am the head of the Kichiki clan, one of the 4 great noble families in the Soul Society, and if we do not follow the law, how can we expect others to? He stated, finishing his explanation. The law, you would watch your sister get executed because of the law. Where my family and friends are concerned, I would fight the law. Ichigo said. Byakuya just looked at him and thought, so this boy was never my enemy to begin with, he was fighting the laws of Soul Society itself. Ichigo Kurosaki, the battle is yours, my blade was shattered by your heart, I will no longer go after Rukia, you have accomplished your goal. Byakuya said as he vanished. Ah, yeah. Ichigo screamed before sealing his and collapsing, his head meeting Orihim's in the process. As his head was resting on Tatsuki's lap while Orihime treated his wounds and replenished his energy, he knew that Rukia would be safe now. He had defeated his opponent, and Aizen was dead, or so he thought. After his wounds were healed, he and his friends found their way down Sakyoku Hill and were greeted by none other than Yoruichi, head captain Yamamoto, and captain Suì-Fēng, Yuki Take, and Kairaku. Ichigo. Oh, you did so good, I'm so proud of you. Yoruichi said as she gave him in front of the other captains. Indeed, young man, your combat skills are quite advanced. The head captain said as Ichigo began to draw his blade. That will not be necessary, young man, as I have no intention of harming you. After seeing your fight with Captain Kichiki, the two of us fighting would inflict more damage on than is needed. Yamamoto said. As he took his hands off his blade, a familiar appeared atop the hill, and Ichigo's eyes went wide. What the hell are they doing here? Ichigo asked. Who are you referring to, Ichigo-kun? Kairaku asked. Renji and Rukia aren't supposed to be here unless. Ichigo's eyes went wide at the three unknown signatures atop the hill. He could feel Rukia's waning, but it suddenly stabilized. Just then an announcement sounded that justified Ichigo's behavior. Attention, attention. This is the Lieutenant Aizen Katetsu of Squad 4. We have just discovered evidence that Sasuke Aizen, Tausen Kaname, and Jin Ichimaru are traitors. Aizen murdered all of Central 46 and has been manipulating all orders given by them. In addition, Lieutenant Hinamori and Captain Hitsujiya are in critical condition after Aizen himself attempted to kill them. Everything I've just told you is true, as it was discovered by Captain Unohana and myself. Captain Unohana is requesting that all able-bodied squads mobilize and apprehend the traitors. Just then another appeared that Ichigo did not recognize, and a loud crash was heard above. I'm going to kill you, Aizen. Captain Kamamura said. Don't start fights, you can't finish Sajin-kun, Aizen said as he cast a shadow on the well-faced captain. Peido number 90, Kurohitsugi, Aizen said as Kamamura collapsed in a bloody mess. I'm a 90s level without the incantation, and that's all the power it had, Aizen thought. Woo. Captain Aizen, scary, a 90s level without the incantation, when did you learn to do that? Jin asked. Don't worry about it, Jin, I screwed up anyway. Aizen replied. Now that we have what we came to kill this trash. He said, holding Rukia up by the restriction collar around her neck. As Jin released his blade, he found that he didn't hit his intended target, but her brother instead. As he pulled his blade out, Byakuya started bleeding profusely. Aizen turned his attention to Renji, only for his blade to be halted by the pitch-black blade of Ichigo's dot. The next thing Ichigo saw was the remaining captains and lieutenants showing up on the hill. While Yoruichi and Suì-Fēng had Aizen immobilized, Orihime, Tatsuki, and Kukaku were standing beside Ichigo, blades at the ready. It's over in Aizen. Yoruichi said. If you move a single inch, I'll cut off your head, Aizen. Suì-Fēng said, only to have Aizen smirk. What's so funny about Aizen? Yoruichi asked. I was just thinking that it is time I left. Aizen said as the sky above him opened up. Suì-Fēng, move. Yoruichi yelled. The both of them barely moved when a barrier came down around Aizen, Jin, and Tausen. Sorry Ran-chan, you were good lay, and it was fun while it lasted, but this is goodbye. Jin said. Tausen, I thought the path you walked was the same as mine, the path of peace and justice. Kamamura shouted. I walk the true path of justice, the path of least bloodshed is the path that Aizen walks, and the only path my eyes can see. Farewell, Kamamura. Tausen said. Farewell, Ryoka boy, I did enjoy our time together, however short it was, but fear not, I shall return to collect you. Aizen said. The hell you will. If you come near me or anyone I care about, I will make good on Suì-Fēng's threat and relieve you of your head. Ichigo exclaimed as he released his and killing intent on the execution grounds, something that did not go unnoticed by everyone there, including Aizen, who just gave him a ping snort and then vanished. Ichigo-kun, that's an interesting you've got there. Kairaku said. Indeed it is. I have never seen one that small before. The head captain's meeting in 1 hour. Captain Aizen. What are you going to do now that you've got the Jin asked. The first thing I'm going to do in Hueco Mundo is build my army, and then I'm going after that boy and force him to join my army. Aizen said. I wouldn't attempt it if I were you, Aizen-sama. Kaname said. Oh, and why is that? Aizen asked. I don't know if you sensed it or not, Aizen-sama, but that boy was suppressing a good deal of his energy when he attacked you. If I had to guess, I'd say he was suppressing at least 60% of his maximum. If the two of you fight, one or both of you will die. Kaname said. Well, if he won't join us willingly, I will hold his friends and family hostage if that is what it takes. Aizen said. Karakura town inside the Arasawa residence. Shina, come on, we gotta go. Issen said. Alright Issen, alright. I am just as excited about seeing my family and going back to Soul Society as you are. Shina said. What do you think Ichigo-kun will say when you finally tell him the truth? She asked. To be honest, he'll probably kick me, or at the very least if he doesn't Kukaku will, and you know how she can be. Isin replied, do you have everything important packed and ready to go? We probably won't be coming back until after Aizen is dealt with if at all. He said. Yes, Isin, Tatsuki and I lived a pretty Spartan lifestyle, even more so after that bastard Aizen killed her father. Shina said. What about your niece, are her things packed and ready? Isin asked. Yes, Isin, Orihim's things are packed and already Akisuke's ready for transport. She said. But now let's go, we all need to be gone by the time Aizen hits Wako Mundo, or he will attempt to use us against Ichigo, and that is something I will not allow. Isin said. Kisuke Tessai. You here? How soon can we get out of here? Isin yelled. Yeah, Isin, we're here. Kisuke said. Your daughters, Tessai, the Vizards and I are just waiting on our transportation to get here. Kisuke exclaimed. Shina, what do you think Tatsuki and Orihim will do when you tell them the truth? Isin asked. Well, Tatsuki will probably never talk to me again, and Orihim will probably avoid me altogether, but they will both have to come to terms with the fact that I did what I did to protect them, as is my right as their mother and aunt. She said, however, you have far more to worry about than I do, Isin. You kept the truth about Masaki's death from Ichigo for 7 years, and caused that brave young man a great deal of pain in the process, and by his sisters as well, who had to watch what their Ani-chan was going through helplessly. I shudder think of the punishment that awaits you. I know, Shina, I know. I will be lucky if all he does is punch me in the face. Isin replied. Boss, our ride is here. Tessai said. Ikifune-chan, so good to see you after so long. Kisuke said as he walked up and gave her a hug, which she returned. Indeed it is. She said as she also gave him a dot. Hey Baldy, get away from my mom. Hiyori yelled as she kicked Kisuke out of the way and gave her surrogate mother a teary-eyed embrace, which was returned. It's good to see you, Hiyori-chan. Hikifune said. It's good to see you too, Aka-san. Hiyori said, and Aka-san means mother or mom, as Hiyori thinks of Hikifune as a surrogate mother, at least in my story. Okay everyone, let's go. I will drop all of you off at Shihoin Manor before going back to the Royal Dimension. Hikifune said as she opened the Chaukai-on, and off they went. An Chikamen means super portal. The Chikamen had just closed when one of Aizen's Espada showed up in Karakura town, looking for Ichigo's friends and family, at least the ones that Aizen knew about, and found no one. Isin and the others had just barely made it. Back in Wako Mundo. Aizen-sama, I have returned from Karakura town, and I found none of the people you spoke of. The only thing I did find was this note on the door of the Kisuke Urahara shop addressed to you. And a ranker said. Thank you, Circle, you may go. He replied, yes sir. She replied. Dear arrogant little boy. You honestly thought you were one step ahead of us. I, along with the rest of Ichigo's friends and loved ones, are someplace that you will never reach. It really is a shame that you wasted your potential being such a selfish prick, but I guess that's all anyone should expect from a narrow-minded little coward like you. By the way, before you go thinking of using Ichigo for your sick and twisted plans, by order of the Soul King, both the and the Soul Society have been closed off to all but officially recognized Soul Reapers, of which you and your fellow traders are no longer lucky enough to get to him. Bye-bye Kisuke Urahara. Damn you Kisuke Urahara. Aizen screamed. Outside the throne room of Las Noches, Jin Ichimaru was standing there with an evil grin on his face when he heard Aizen throwing a tantrum. Back in the Soul Society at Shihoin Manor. Okay Isin, this is as far as I'm prepared to go, I have to get back. Hikifune said. I understand Kiryu, give the Soul King my regards and tell him thanks. Isin said. I will, and you too Hiyori-chan and Kisuke-kun I will see later. Kiryu said as she gave Hiyori a hug and Kisuke a warm embrace and a fiery hug. And I decided to pair Kisuke and Hikifune in this story because of their scientific background. I thought they made a good match. Is that you? Akemi and Azami asked. Akemi and Azami, how are my two old friends doing? Isin asked, giving them each a firm embrace. I missed you guys. He said. We missed you as well, Isin. You know our daughter has told us a great deal about your son. She also had us avoid her prior engagement so she could marry young Ichigo. I hope this is alright. Akemi said. In truth, I had a feeling this would happen and it doesn't bother me one bit. However, once Ichigo finds out that I kept the truth about his mother's death from him, I'll probably be spending the wedding in the Squad 4 medical ward. Isin said. Is it that bad? Azami asked. Yes, but Ichigo needs to know as well as Aizen's connection to it. Isin said. You mean that bastard Aizen is connected to your wife's death? Akemi asked. Yes. I'm afraid so, but he has to know the truth as I have kept it from him for long enough. Isin said. What happened to Isin? Azami asked. Isin just shook his head and said, as much as I want to tell both of you, Ichigo needs to hear it first. Well, the fourth is having a barbecue, why not tell him there? Besides, there are some Soul Reapers that are calling for his blood for invading the Soul Society the way he did, regardless of how helpful it was. They want to make an example of him. I think telling him that he is from the Shiba clan will go a long way towards shutting those ignorant fools up. Broken district. Ichigo over here. Yoruichi exclaimed as she was waiting for him with Orihime, Totsuki, and her parents. Kurosaki-kun. Orihime shouted as she Totsuki and Yoruichi's mother Azami each gave Ichigo a hug and Akemi her father gave him a very firm handshake which Ichigo returned which impressed Akemi a great deal. Ichigo, my boy, my wife and I can tell just how much our daughter loves you, which is why we and the elders of our clan have approved you as a suitor to marry her. Akemi said. I don't have a problem with that, but what about Orihime, Totsuki and the others? Ichigo asked. What others? Yoruichi asked, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Come on Yori-chan, you know what others think. Unohana, Rukia and Ranjiku. Ichigo said, or did you forget having a conversation with Unohana about our arrangement? He asked. Oh, those others, yeah, they can join too. Yoruichi said with a now very sheepish grin on her face. I believe that Orihime, Totsuki and I told you already that you can have as many lovers as you want, as long as we're included. Does that include me too? Azami asked, grinning from ear to ear. What? Mother? You already have a man, now Ichigo is ours not yours. Yoruichi said, sticking out her tongue as the argument started. Ichigo, let's take a walk while they bicker. Akemi said. Is it always like that between those two? Ichigo asked. Chuckling Akemi said yes, unfortunately Azami likes to tease all of our children, even the other captains. She gets a kick out of it. He said. Where do you think Yoruichi gets it from? I can already see what my marriage to her is going to be like, teasing 24/7. Ichigo said. Does that bother you Ichigo? Akemi asked. Are you kidding? With all the teasing that Yoruichi and Urahara put me through I'm used to it by now. Ichigo said. Only to get a laugh from Akemi in response. While Yoruichi, Orihime and Totsuki were talking to her mother, Unohana, Rukia, Ranjiku and Suì-Fēng showed up. Hello, ladies, did you have a chance to talk to Ichigo about the arrangement? Yoruichi asked. We did, however Suì-Fēng didn't make a time to experience what we did. Unohana said. Oh. And what was that? Orihime asked. Well, let's just say that after our conversation and onlying him once the three of us had to change our panties before coming here. Rukia said. And how was it? Totsuki asked. It was heavenly. I've never felt anything like that before, not even Jin was that good. Ranjiku said, fanning her face with her hand. You know why it was that good even without penetration? Yoruichi asked because Ichigo has such mastery over his that he can exert it with just the right amount of force to lightly stimulate your G-spot to cause you to heaven. She said. I didn't know that was possible. Unohana said. Neither did he until I showed him how. Yoruichi said it was necessary at first due to his size. Having a first made penetration easier on us during his ing and it isn't length I'm referring to. How big is Yoruichi? Ranjiku asked. Well, in terms of length he's about 8 inches. But his girth is almost 2 inches when fully engorged. Of course he finally learned to control it, so sticking it in doesn't feel like getting rammed with a bulldozer anymore. With you and Suì-Fēng you would need that extra lubrication, regardless because of your petite size until you got used to it, but for Totsuki, Orihime, Ranjiku, Unohana, and I, it probably wouldn't be that much of an issue. Yoruichi said. Is that right, so you dump me all, so you can some pathetic piece of commoner trash? A voice shouted from behind. Naoko. Yoruichi exclaimed. Come Yoruichi, we're leaving, you are mine, and I will have what's mine now. Naoko shouted while making a scene. Shunko. Yoruichi yelled, causing a giant lightning bolt to destroy a 10-foot space between the two. I'm not going anywhere with you, you had your chance with me 110 years ago, but I caught you sleeping with 2 other women and in my bed no less. I haven't been yours for over 100 years, so deal with it, you never cared about me, all you wanted me for was my name, and nothing more, you never loved me. Yoruichi said. Moments earlier. Ichigo and Akemi were sitting having a nice conversation when they noticed a large lightning bolt scream toward the ground. Yoruichi? Ichigo shouted as flashed back to his beautiful flash goddess as fast as he could go. Back with Yoruichi. Naoko continued to get closer to force himself on Yoruichi, but she wasn't having any of it. Just then in a blur Naoko was kicked away from Yoruichi and into another building across the street. Yoruichi as well as everyone else was confused until they saw Ichigo standing there seemingly from out of nowhere. Ichigo walked up to Yoruichi, caressing her face with his hand, and asked, I saw you, are you alright? I'm fine Ichigo, my former fiancé seems to have taken issue with the fact he and I are no longer engaged, he is under the delusional belief that I am his property. She said as she gently leaned her face into Ichigo's caressing touch. The next person that shows up is Kukaku. Where did you come from Kukaku? Yoruichi asked. I was down the street getting something to eat when I saw the flash of your eye came running. She said. What happened? She asked. Naoko, that's what. Yoruichi replied. Is that dipshit still around? She asked incredulously. He has a lot of nerve showing his face after she cheated on you and in your own bed too. Kukaku said. Yoruichi, who is this prick exactly? Ichigo asked. Well Ichigo, this idiot's name is Naoko Kobayashi. He is a member of a low-level noble family, the Kobayashi clan. Long before you were even born he was my fiancé. The marriage was arranged by his elders and mine, that is until I found out that he only wanted to marry me because of my name to give his family greater political power. However, that wasn't all. I found out later on that he only wanted to use the power and political influence he would gain to take over my family and exile me. I also found him sleeping with two cheapess in my bed. After that I started to little by little remove the power of Shihoin clan elders and vest it within myself as well as my parents so that when the time came I could void the engagement and get his family's noble status revoked if necessary. Yoruichi said. What do you want to do Yoruichi? Ichigo asked. That is your decision Ichigo as he has come to fight you for my hand, how he has dealt with is entirely up to you Ichigo. She said. Very well, I guess I'll show all of you something no one has seen yet. Ichigo said as he drew Kori no Ryu from her sheath. Bankai. Freeze, contain no Kori no Rick. He said as he released Kori no Ryu's for the first time since he obtained it. Everyone around Ichigo could tell that his in that form was amazing and far higher than what should have been possible until it just decreased inexplicably. An. Contain no Kori, no Rick is translated as Imperial Blue Lotus Ice Dragon. Ichigo-kun, why aren't you releasing your full power? Azami asked. Well I don't really want to kill all of the innocent citizens of the Rukin district, that would kind of piss off the head captain, who we have to go see in about 10 minutes, Ichigo said. Just then out of nowhere 3 captains appeared. Captains Kamamura, Kairaku, and Yukitake. They saw someone standing there that they didn't recognize. Who are you? Captain Kamamura said as he drew his blade. I apologize Captain Kamamura, you don't recognize me in this form. Ichigo said as he turned around. Ichigo-kun what happened to you? Yukitake said somewhat shocked. Well this Kobayashi clansman tried to stick his nose where it didn't belong and started a fight with me for Yoruichi's hand and well, I wanted to show him that no matter what he tries he's already lost. Ichigo said. I don't think that's what he was referring to Ichigo. Rukia said. Oh you mean this? Ichigo said, pointing to the released form of the Zanpakuto in his hand. This is the Bankai form of my Zanpakuto Kori no Ryu, her name is Kentei no Sara no Kori no Rick. Ichigo said. I must say Ichigo-kun is quite impressive. Kairaku said. What can she do? I hope you understand Captain Kairaku that there are some things I will not discuss, but I will tell you 2 things 1. That she is the most powerful ice type Zanpakuto around and 2. That she can control the temperature and air pressure within a 15-mile radius of my body and do so effortlessly and automatically without a word from me. I guess you could say it's something of an automatic defense mechanism. Ichigo said. Just then Naoko got tired of being ignored and lunged at Ichigo. Die you commoner trash. He said. Just as he got close enough to jam his blade through Ichigo's heart, what everyone thought was a long jacket like his other was actually a pair of blue-colored dragon wings that batted Naoko away like a rag doll. Everyone could see what Ichigo meant by automatic defense, but that's not all everyone saw. They finally got a true look at his Bankai's release. His hair and eyes turned blue and his hair stopped at his lower back. His entire body was covered in blue-colored dragon scales, revealing to all the women there his heavily defined muscular body and 6-pack abs. The blade in his hand was very unusual to say the least, it was blue in its entirety. The hilt was blue with a blue chain that had a clawed dragon's hand at the end of the chain, the guard was a blue dragon's head with its mouth agape and a blue blade coming out of the dragon's mouth. The blade itself was about 47 inches long and the cold coming off of it was enough to freeze anyone foolish enough to get close to solid within a few seconds. Naoko I will give you and your 2 foolish friends a choice, you can either leave and never bother me, my loved ones or their families again, or I can turn the 3 of you into the Soul Society's largest living popsicle. It's your choice. Ichigo said. I'd rather kill you and take back what's mine. Naoko said. Alright. Yoruichi and everyone else saw that I tried to give him a choice. Ichigo said. Indeed we did now finish up so we got to the captain's meeting on time. Just being in his presence again is making me sick. Yoruichi said. You heard her Naoko, let's finish this. Ichigo said. Ah. Naoko screamed as he and his friends lunged forward to attack Ichigo. Ichigo held his blade horizontal in front of him and said Soryukureha as a move blast of ice came from the blade, freezing everything except the heads of Naoko and his friends. Ichigo sealed his blade, walked over to Naoko and said I gave you a choice and you chose wrong. Now I expect you to leave Yoruichi and all my friends and loved ones alone because if we have to do this song and dance again next time I will kill you. After that Ichigo disappeared and headed towards the captain's meeting with Yoruichi's parents in tow. They are well, sir. Ichigo's sisters are just as adorable as they were the day they were born. Kisuke managed to get them out of their human bodies and awaken their dormant Shinigami and Quincy powers. Kisuke and Tessai are well, and so is my darling little Hiyori and the rest of the Vizards. Shina is a little apprehensive about Totsuki and Orihime finding out the truth, and so is Isin where Ichigo and his daughters are concerned, but aside from that, they are all okay. Isin also asked me to send you his best and to thank you. Hikifune said. Excellent news, Kiryu. Now would you please send an Etsu and Tanjiro on your way out and inform the Shibas, Kurosakis, and the Ishidas that the rest of their family is in Soul Society and they will be seeing Ichigo, Karen, and Yuzu soon. Also inform Candace, Minas, and the Sternriders as well. The Soul King said. Yes, your highness. Hikifune said. Tanjiro, Etsu the Soul King wishes to see you. Hikifune said as the two in question just nod and head in the direction of the Soul King's quarters. Knock. Knock. You wish to see us, sir? Tanjiro and Etsu said in unison. Yes, please come in. The king replied. I have a task for the two of you that needs to be handled with stealth and discretion. The king said. I need the two of you to go to Hueco Mundo and bring back these two female rankers and their faction with all due haste. He said. Do so quickly but quietly, sedate them if you have to, but do not harm them. Yes, sir. Tanjiro and Etsu said and then left to fulfill their task. Masaki-chan. Masaki-chan. Hikifune exclaimed. She found Masaki sitting with her family and the Sternriders. I have news for all of you from the Soul King. He said to tell you all that Ichigo, Karen, and Yuzu will be here soon, probably within the next day or two if I had to guess. She said. This made everyone very happy, especially Masaki, Candace, and Minas. Thank goodness I can finally stop all this waiting and see my babies again. Masaki said. Captain's meeting. Ichigo, his ladies and Yoruichi's parents, and Kukaku all showed up at the meeting on time, only to receive a grin from the head captain who said. Ah, good, we're all here. Not everyone. Yamaji, Kurisuchi still absent. Kairaku said. So he is. Has anyone seen Captain Kurisuchi? The head captain asked. If you're referring to the idiot that looked like a clown and liked to use other Soul Reapers as living bombs, he's dead. Orihime said, flexing her Riatsu, shocking everyone in the room. How do you know this, young lady? Yukitake asked. Because I killed the bastard. Orihime replied. What was left of his ashes has probably blown away. What did he do to warrant such treatment from you, young lady? The head captain asked. Well, let's see, he admitted that we exist as lab rats for him to using other Soul Reapers as living bombs, which I witnessed myself. He admitted to bringing innocent humans and Quincy's here for experimentation, and finally to the unjust murder of Sakuna Shida, the grandfather of my friend Uriwa Shida, caused by the aforementioned experimentation. I think those reasons alone justify killing the bastard, don't you? Orihime said once again, shocking everyone in the room. Do you have some form of proof, young lady? The head captain asked. Before she could answer, Uryu piped up and said I do. As he strode forward and gave the head captain the picture that Mayuri gave to him. That, sir, is my grandfather Sakuna Shida, or what is left of him after that bastard you're so concerned with. You abducted him and brought him here and treated him like a lab rat. Uryu spat venomously. I see, young one. I am sorry for your loss, but you would do well to remember, young Quincy, that you are a guest here, so do not overstep your authority. The head captain said. At least you had a chance to fight for your pride as Quincy and avenge him. Yes, sir, I did, thank you. Uryu said. The head captain responded with a nod and a gentle smile to the young Quincy. Ichigo Kurosaki, Captains Kamamura, Kairaku, and Yukitake tell me that you have another very interesting Bankai. Tell me about it. The head captain said. Well, sir, it is Kori no Ryu's. Her name is Kute no Kumrai no Rik, and in either or state she is the most powerful ice type Zanpakuto there is. Ichigo said. I doubt that. The voice of Toshiro Hitsuji chimed in. Oh really? Care to put your money where your mouth is, little boy? Ichigo said. Little boy. I'll have you know I'm a captain brat and you will show proper respect. Hitsuji yelled. Indeed I will, just as soon as you've earned it like everyone else has to and not before. Ichigo snapped back. Enough, both of you. The head captain yelled. Ichigo Kurosaki, could you show the rest of you who haven't seen this ice Bankai of yours? The head captain asked. Sure. Ichigo replied. Bankai. Freeze, contain no Kori no Rik. He said, and everyone could feel the difference in power between his and Hitsuji's almost instantly. Well, that is interesting, young Kurosaki. The head captain said. Ichigo, I want a rematch. Zaraki said. That's fine, but it won't be to the death, as I don't kill unless I have no other options. Ichigo replied as he sealed his blade. Itsuki Arasawa, Orihime Inoue, and Ichigo Kurosaki, you three are by far the most talented young reapers I have seen in quite a while. I dare say that each one of you is as strong as me or pretty close. I would like to thank you for stopping Rukia Kichiki's execution and revealing traitors within our ranks. You have truly saved the Soul Society today. You should all be very proud of yourselves. The head captain said. Now as far as Central 46 is concerned, it has been confirmed that Aizen did indeed kill all the members, so the first order of business is to clean up the council chamber and to do a complete search of the living area below for any possible survivors. Though I am not hopeful, next we must begin our search for new members to install as soon as the war with Aizen is over. Finally, as head captain I am instituting a code black and declaring martial law. From this point forward, no action is valid unless authorized by myself and the three most senior captains under me who are Kairaku, Yuki-take, and Anohana. From now until this war is over with and until Central 46 is officially reinstated, the four of us shall comprise the senior council. The head captain said. Is there any new business before this meeting is adjourned? What about the open captain's positions? Kairaku asked. That will be discussed at a later date. The head captain replied. Anything else? Meanwhile in Hueco Mundo. While the captains had their meeting, Tanjiro and Etsu were busy completing the task the Soul King gave them. Tanjiro, is this the first group? Etsu asked. Yes. According to the information we have, the name of this one is Neliel and her two brothers Pesh and Dondachaka. I didn't realize there was an ranker this small. Tanjiro said as Neliel and her fraction woke up. Who are you pompadour heads? Little Nell asked only to have Etsu start laughing him off. My name is Tanjiro little one and I've come to pick you up. Tanjiro said. Why? Nell asked. Because there is someone very important that wants to meet you. He responded. Is this important person gonna hurt Nell? She asked. No little one. He won't hurt you. Tanjiro said. Okay. Nell exclaimed with a toothy grin. Hey. You do understand that wherever Nell-sama goes we go as well. Pesh said. Of course that is what we planned anyway. Tanjiro said. Why are you here? Pesh asked. I don't know Pesh, we were ordered to come here and retrieve two ranker and their fractions and take them back with us. As for who sent us you will find that out as soon as we leave Hueco Mundo. Tanjiro said. Etsu, where is the other one? Tanjiro asked. Inside that large fortress. Etsu replied. We need to create a distraction so we can get in, grab her with her fraction and get out unseen. Etsu said. Getting in and out unseen shouldn't be a problem for me, although if you can tell her exact location inside that fortress, it would be helpful. Tanjiro said. Wait a minute, it seems that she has now left the structure with 5 additional ranker. Etsu said. Oh really, which way is she headed? Tanjiro asked. She's headed straight for us. Etsu said. Really, she just made our jobs a lot easier then. Tanjiro replied. How long till she reaches us? About a minute, Tanjiro. Etsu said. Actually I'm already a Shinigami. The ranker said. Would you be Tia Harable? Tanjiro asked. Indeed I am, and who would you be, stranger? Tia asked. My name is Tanjiro and I have been ordered to come here and escort our lord. He said. And who is this lord of yours? She asked. I'm afraid that I cannot explain that to you just yet, but your faction and their 2 little friends are more than welcome to join us. Tanjiro said. And to put your mind at ease, none of you will be harmed in any way. Why should we believe you, Tanjiro? Tia asked. Because if I had any reason to harm you, you would already be dead. He replied. Tia looked at the fraction with her, who just nodded, and then she said, very well. Tanjiro led the way, but if you try anything I will kill you. Fair enough, Harable-san. Tanjiro said as they all walked through the Chowkai Mom and headed for the royal dimension. Inside Las Notches. Lord Aizen. Lord Aizen. Kanem yelled, running up to Aizen. Yes Kanem, what is it? Aizen replied. Tia Harable, her predecessor Neliel, their faction as well as your aides Loli and Minoli, have all just disappeared. Kanem said. Are they dead? Aizen asked. Unknown, but most likely. Kanem replied. Well, no matter what, I can always create more rancor, I have plenty of stock to work with. Aizen said. Yes, Lord Aizen, Kanem replied. Inside the Chikaman. Okay, just who are you and what do you want? Tia asked. We are members of the Royal Guard and we don't want anything from you, Ms. Harable. It is the Soul King himself that wishes to speak with you. Tanjiro said. What does the Soul King wish to speak with us for? She asked. I do not know. I'm afraid you'll have to ask him that question. Tanjiro replied. I suggest you wait to speak to him. Very well Tanjiro, we will wait. However, if the Soul King, you or your companion, try to harm us anyway, neither one of you will live long enough to regret it. Tia said with killing intent, lacing every word. Far enough, Ms. Harable. Tanjiro said with a chuckle. As they approach the exit, the doorway to the royal realm opens up to them and they are standing in front of the Soul King himself. Inside the Soul King's living quarters. Forgive us sir, we didn't mean to exit the Chikaman in your private quarters. Tanjiro said as he took a knee and bowed before the Soul King. That is quite alright Tanjiro, I felt your presence in the Chikamen and redirected the exit here. The Soul King replied. Now could the two of you leave me with these Arankor and go tell Candace, Minas, and Misaki that I need to see them please? He said. Yes sir. They said before leaving. Now please have a seat for all of you. The Soul King said. What do you want? Haribal asked. Do things I want to complete your evolution and turn you into real Shinigami Arankor hybrids so that you can have a life free from persecution, and I want you and Neliel here once she regains full control of her powers to marry my successor to bring peace between the Arankors and Soul Society. The Soul King replied. You want us to marry your successor? Tia exclaimed. Why? She asked. Because the Soul King has always had multiple wives for the purpose of helping him do his job, and in this case helping rule over Hueco Mundo as well as Soul Society in an effort to maintain the balance and undo the damage that Aizen will eventually cause. Not only will my successor need strong beautiful women to keep him in line and give him a swift kick in when he steps out of line. He said. Tia was blushing being called beautiful and then said okay I'll do it provided Lady Neliel agrees and you complete our evolutions as promised. What do you think of Neliel? The Soul King asked Nell who was now in her adult form. I don't have a problem with it provided I get to see what my future husband looks like. She said as Ichigo's mom and his two Quincy fiancés walked in. I take it that these two women are the two Arankor wives my son will be marrying. She said as the Soul King turned on a monitor showing Ichigo who was currently in a captain's meeting. The Soul King and Misaki began telling Minas and Candace everything about Ichigo and the Soul King, telling the Arankor how he was dying and only had a short time left to live, all the while watching as the meeting was dismissed and the captains headed for a celebration. The Soul King then asked Candace and Minas to ask the other Sternriders to come in so they could watch the party unfolding down below and listen to what Ichigo was about to say. Back at the captains' meeting moments earlier. Head Captain I believe that Ichigo and his two young lady friends would be ideal candidate to be substitute Soul Reapers and be our agents in the world of the living. Yuki Take said. I agree. The head captain said. What do you call young Ichigo? I accept the head captain. Ichigo said. Good. Now that our business is concluded I believe we have a party to get to. The head captain said as he adjourned the meeting. Party at the 4th division. Everyone at the party was carrying on laughing and telling jokes. Ichigo was surrounded by his ladies, the Shihoin family, and the head captain. Ichigo tell us about yourself. Azami said. What do you want to know about Lady Azami? Ichigo asked. Everyone around was waiting for her to answer when she said well why did you become a Soul Reaper? She said. This question had everyone waiting on pins and needles for him to answer. Well to answer that question properly I have to answer a question that Captain Kichiki asked me during our fight. Ichigo said. Byakuya remember the question you asked me during our fight? Ichigo asked. I do. I asked you why you would save Rukia. Byakuya said. Well the answer to that question is 2 words, Misaki Kurosaki. Ichigo said. Who is that young Kurosaki? The head captain asked. She is or rather was my mother. Ichigo said I take it, she's dead. Captain Kairaku asked. Yes she is. Ichigo said. How does that answer my question, Kurosaki? Byakuya asked. I'm getting to Byakuya. Ichigo said. Little did Ichigo, Tatsuki, and Orihime know that their family was there, as well as the Vizards, as well as Kisuke and Tessai, listening to every word he said. And my dad, my sisters, and my mother was like a star, and we were all just happy to be in her orbit. My mom was an amazing person, she would always put the needs of others before her own, and that is something I inherited. My childhood was great, she was always there for our family when we needed her. The best moments for me as a child were when she walked to school in the morning and then walked home in the afternoon. Later on when my little sisters Karen and Yuzu came along the best part of my day was helping my parents take care of them. I usually left diapers changing to my parents. I always helped out in other areas. I jumped at the chance to spend as much time with them as I could and when we were old enough she started teaching us other languages. Latin would come to have a profound impact on me. I was taught to judge a person by their actions, never their differences, and to never allow someone's differences dictate how you treat them. Being different from someone else doesn't make you better than them, it just makes you different, nothing more nothing less. In fact, our family motto was based on those teachings. It was Secundum Genus, Amicitiae which is Latin. It means family first, friend second, then yourself. It was my mother's way of teaching us to always put the needs of others before our own. I came to realize just how much my mother meant to me as time went on, she was my light. Ichigo said only to notice that everyone there was hanging on every word he said. What do you mean she was your light Ichigo? Yuki Take asked. I grew up knowing that the world I lived in was a dark and evil place and it was my mother that lit my path and kept the darkness at bay. For a while everything was fine and our family was happy, and then it happened, she died. Everyone could see the pain he was in talking about this and saw the tears streaming down his face, but they could also feel it through his. His pain was so strong they could taste it in the air, but no one stopped him, as they knew this was probably something he needed to get out. How did it happen? Chika Yamamoto, the head captain's wife, asked. The day was June 17, 7 years ago. I was 9 years old at the time. My mother had just picked me up from the dojo where I was taking martial arts. As we were walking home along the river and saw a girl on the side of the river that looked like she was about to jump in. The river was moving very fast that day, as it had been raining, so like the good little boy she raised me to be, I went running over to try to help her before she fell in. I heard my mother call out to me, and then everything went dark. I awoke to find my mother's dead body on top of me. She had a hole in her back, and I found myself covered in her blood. After that everything changed. I focused my anger, hatred and rage solely on my martial arts and myself. I considered the martial arts training as not just training, but as punishment. I put myself through some of the most brutal training I could think of and nearly punished myself into an early grave as a result, of course dying and spending the rest of eternity in hell as punishment for my crime would have been a small price to pay as far as I was concerned. I did not stop there. For 7 years, I stayed away from everyone I cared about out of fear that the same monster that took my mother from me would come back and take them from me as well. I am sure it may have seemed selfish, in fact, I'm certain it was, but at the time I didn't care as long as my family and friends were safe. That was the only thing I cared about. What happened to me was of no consequence. Now we come to the part where I answer your question, Byakuya. It was about 2 months ago when a certain raven-haired Soul Reaper popped into my life, and that Soul Reaper was your sister. Rukia gave me a very special gift, something that for humans does not come along very often. It's called closure. After she gave her powers and I became a Soul Reaper, the first time I came face to face with a monster that killed my mom, it was a hollow named Grand Fisher. That day he had used his lure to draw me or those with high levels of spirit energy in, and instead of killing me he got my mom instead. She sacrificed her life so I could live. The day I found Grand Fisher, he gloated about it like it was the best thing he ever did. He even made his lure take on the form of my mother to taunt me even more, and in the fight that followed, I very nearly lost my life. Of course he didn't get away without a scratch either. I'm just sorry I wasn't able to kill the Ur. If it wasn't for your sister Byakuya, my life would be very different right now. Rukia gave me the closure I needed to get on with my life and stop blaming myself for my mother's death, and I will never be able to thank her enough for the wonderful gift she gave me. I became a Soul Reaper to thank Rukia for what she did for me and to honor not only my mother's memory but also her sacrifice. Ichigo said, finishing his tale. Ichinai Ani-chan. Yuzu and Karen said, standing there with their father crying. Yuzu, Karen. Ichigo said, seeing that they were crying, he said, come here. Bending down to pick them up into hugs and giving them S. Ichinai, you don't blame yourself for mom's death anymore, right? Karen asked. No Karen, I don't, but for a while after it happened I did, he replied. What changed, Ani-chan? Yuzu asked. A really good friend gave me a good swift kick in the dot, he said. I'm glad you two are here. Ichigo said, you are Ani-chan. Yuzu replied. Why? Karen asked. Because I get to do this. He exclaimed, putting them on the ground. He said, tickle war. Ah. Ani-chan, Ichinai, stop, that tickles. Karen and Yuzu cried out as their big brother began to tickle them without mercy. No. Big brother, right, state I get to tickle you and drive you batty as much as you want and you can't say anything. He said as he began to blow raspberries on their stomachs. There's no such thing as big brother rights, you just made it up, ah. Karen said as Ichigo started tickling her and Yuzu again. Of course I made it up. You two drive me up a wall sometimes, so I've got to get my licks in when I can. He said before stopping and bringing them both into a warm embrace. You two will never know how much Dad and I love you, never forget that, understanding. He said them both on the forehead, and then the two sisters gave their big brother a hug as well. We won't forget, Ichinai, Ani-chan. They both said. Ichigo. Isin said, getting his son's attention. OMF. Isin said as Ichigo punched him in the stomach. What the hell was that for? Isin asked, trying to catch his breath. You've got some nerve asking such a stupid question. First, you bring my sisters into what potentially could have still been enemy territory, and then you show up dressed up like a Soul Reaper. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Ichigo said. You bastard. Kukaku said as she walked up and punched Isin in the stomach again. Banju and I thought you were dead. Kane thought you were dead. Your friends and colleagues in the Soul Society thought you were dead, so help me if you don't tell Ichigo and his sisters the truth about their heritage right now. The next punch I give, you will make the last one feel like a light tickle. Kukaku shouted. Well, Go-chin, are you going to enlighten your children or not? Ichigo asked. Well, Ichigo, for one thing, my name isn't Isen Kurosaki, it's Isen Shiba. Kukaku and Ganju are your second cousins. He said. 19 years ago, I was the captain of Squad 10, as well as the head of the Shiba clan. I am still technically the latter due to the fact that I never designated an heir that is until now. Ichigo, you are my heir and next leader of the Shiba clan. He said, but that's not all, is it? Ichigo asked. I'm afraid not. Isen said. Previously on Cats, Bees, and Souls. You bastard. Kukaku said as she walked up and punched Isen in the stomach again. Anju and I thought you were dead. Kane thought you were dead. Your friends and colleagues in the Soul Society thought you were dead, so help me if you don't tell Ichigo and his sisters the truth about their heritage right now. The next punch I give, you will make the last one feel like a light tickle. Kukaku shouted. Well, Gochin, are you going to enlighten your children or not? Ichigo asked. Well, Ichigo, for one thing, my name isn't Isen Kurosaki, it's Isen Shiba. Kukaku and Ganju are your second cousins. He said. 19 years ago, I was the captain of Squad 10, as well as the head of the Shiba clan. I am still technically the latter due to the fact that I never designated an heir that is until now. Ichigo, you are my heir and next leader of the Shiba clan. He said, but that's not all, is it? Ichigo asked. I'm afraid not. Isen said. Hardy at the 4th division. I have kept a lot of things from you and your sisters, all born out of my desire to keep a promise I made to your mother and keep you safe, but since Aizen has made his move, there is no longer any point in keeping them from you. Ichigo, everything you said about your mother and what she meant to us was the truth, but there is something else that neither you nor Uryu-kun know of your family history. Uryu, I am sorry you had to find out from me. I would have preferred it if you found out from Raikin, but I do not have the time to escort you home. Ichigo, I first met your mother 19 years ago. I was the captain of Squad 10, and we received reports of Soul Reapers being killed in the living world, and I went to the living world without getting permission. I found that it was a hollow that the Soul Society officially designated White Dot. I fought with it, and even with my release I got my hands on me, and just when the creature was about to finish me off, I saw a blue arrow come out of nowhere. I looked at who fired that arrow and imagined my surprise when it was a woman. That woman's name was Misaki Kurosaki, my future wife and your mother. Your mother was not just any run-of-the-mill Quincy, she was pure blood. I was brought out of my musings long enough to see that hollow attack your mother only for her to activate her blood beam, a defensive technique of the Quincy, and she defeated it. I found out from her later that she allowed it past her guard so she could put an arrow through its head. The bite the creature inflicted should have killed her, but I guess blood beam helped her, so I thought. After I healed up, I went back to Soul Society to make my report in which I left your mother's involvement out of the incident. 3 days later, I snuck back to the living world to thank her only to find that the hollows had infected your mother's soul by copying his own soul into hers, and as a result, she was headed straight for a soul suicide. Uryu, your father blamed me for what happened, and I guess that from his point of view he was right. The reason your father blamed me was because Misaki and your father were engaged, but because of the hollow attack they cancelled the marriage and kicked her out. Uryu, Misaki was technically your aunt, which makes me your uncle and my children your cousins. However, I digress. The day I came back, I could see that Misaki was in trouble, and I had no idea how to help her. Then Kisuke popped up out of nowhere and offered to help save her. I agreed immediately. I knew that if I didn't do something to help her, then I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. That was when Kisuke told me that the only way to save her was to use my power as a seal, by connecting my body to hers using spirit threads. When our bodies were connected, I went inside her soul and beat back the hollow, forcing it into a deep slumber. After that, with my powers being used for the seal, I couldn't go back to the Soul Society, so I opened a clinic. Medical was about the only thing I was really good at, and with help from Kisuke I made it work. Your mother would still come by to hear me now and then I didn't mind. After she graduated college, your mother and I got married, and a few years later, you came into our lives, and 5 years later Karen and Yuzu. Isen said. But it wasn't just Grand Fisher that was responsible for your mother's death, Ichigo. That thing was only part of it. The hollow that attacked your mother was an artificially created Lord CL hollow created by Aizen using a Shinigami soul as the base. When you were born, we discovered to our horror that the hollow infesting your mother's soul moved to yours during pregnancy and fused itself with your Shinigami powers, essentially becoming your Zanpakuto, which is why shortly after you were born my powers as a Shinigami began to return. The night your mother died I could sense Grand Fisher's presence, but I did not go to help your mother, not because I didn't want to or because I couldn't, but because I did not see the need to help her. Your mother was the strongest Quincy of her generation and had the strongest blood beam in Quincy history, even stronger than that of Ryu's father and grandfather. If only I had remembered what your mother had told me sooner, she might still be alive, and I stress might. Isen said. What happened, Dad? Ichigo asked. The night she died was the night of selection. The Quincy King, a despicable creature named Iwich, used a technique called Oswalin to steal the powers of any Quincy's that he deemed impure, and unfortunately for you and Uryu-kun, both your mothers were on his list, Misaki for being tainted with hollow essence before you were born, and your uncanny Katajiri Ishida. Uryu's mother for being a half-blood. The only difference between the two deaths is that your mother died in her fight with Grand Fisher because she could no longer access her powers, and Kani-chan died 3 months later because when Iwich stole her powers, he also stole most of her life force. She had just enough to live for 3 months after Iwich used Oswalin. Iwich, Aizen, and Grand Fisher were all responsible for your mother's death. Iwich because of the reason you've just heard, but Aizen because I found out later after Misaki's death that Aizen sent Grand Fisher after you and your mother that night in order to kill you both. Aizen knew as I did that if you were a perfect transcendent being, a being that is the perfect balance of Shinigami, Hollow, and Quincy powers were to somehow master and control those powers you would be a threat to his plans. Issen said. Is that all? Ichigo asked. Almost Ichigo. Issen said. Uryu, do you know the Kaiser Jesang? Issen asked. Yes, all Quincy's know it. Uryu replied. Would you enlighten us please? Issen asked. The sealed king of the Quincy will regain his heartbeat after 900 years, 90 years after that would regain his intelligence, and 9 years later would regain his powers. Uryu said. Very good nephew. However, your version is incomplete, there is a verse missing. Issen said. The sealed king of the Quincy will regain his heartbeat after 900 years, 90 years after that would regain his intelligence, 9 years later would regain his powers, and 9 days later would regain the world. Issen said. I found the last verse while looking through Misaki's research notes. You see, Ichigo, your mother, believed that Quincy's were part of the reincarnation cycle as well, and thus capable of wielding both their powers as well as Shinigami powers, and began to research both aspects alongside Kisuke and Sauken Ishida. They even helped Kisuke study his with the purpose of trying to break the barrier between the three races safely, but they were coming up short, so they stopped their research and sealed the way. Issen said. What are you saying, Issen? Kairaku asked. What I'm saying about Shunsui is that Iwich will return to attack the Soul Society, and we had all best be ready when he does. Issen said. So what you're saying, Issen Shiba, is that your wife, grandfather-in-law, and Kisuke Urahara were working on a way for Quincy's to cleanse by gaining the powers of the Shinigami, while still retaining the ability to use Quincy powers. The head captain said. Why go that far? Because Yamaji, i.e. the Kurosaki and Ishida clans believed strongly in an alliance between Shinigami and Quincy. They believed in this so strongly that they began to openly defy Iwich and work with the Soul Society in secret until he found out and ordered their execution. He personally killed them or had them killed off until their numbers dwindled to almost nothing, and now my son, daughters, nephew and my brother-in-law are all that's left of them. Issen said. You, your sisters, and Uryu embody the hopes and dreams of so many. You are the legacy of the Shiba, Kurosaki, and Ishida clans. Everything that they hope to achieve has been achieved, though the four of you, and that is something you should all be proud of. I'm proud of it, and I know your mothers and grandfather would be as well. Issen said. Are you done? Ichigo asked. Yes, son, I'm done. Issen said. Whack. OMF. Ack. What the hell was that for Ichigo? Issen asked, catching his breath. Because you lied to your children, that's why. You kept it secret and caused them more pain than was necessary. Because for 7 years you walked around with your head in your hands under the delusional belief that you were protecting us when all you were doing is protecting yourself. Ichigo exclaimed, yelling at his father. I know, Ichigo. I know you, Karen, and Yuzu feel like I lied to you and that I betrayed you, but I made a promise to your mother before she died, and I wasn't going to break that promise for you or anyone else. Issen said. OMF. Now what did I do, Ichigo? Issen said. That was for using mom as an excuse to justify your actions, or should I say inaction. Ichigo said as he sat down in a huff. Are there any other secrets you're keeping from us, Dad? Just one, but it will be discussed privately. Issen said, however, I believe the woman next to me has a few secrets she needs to divulge. The woman standing next to him took off her hood and everyone was shocked. Mom? Totsuki exclaimed. What the hell are you doing here? Shina-chan, the head captain, and his wife said with tears coming down Chika's face. Hi Mom. Hi Dad. Shina said. I know I have a lot of explaining to do, and that is why I am here, but also to provide intelligence as to what Aizen is after and why I disappeared all those years ago. Itsuki, I know you thought you were human, but nothing could be further from the truth, and that goes for you as well, Orihim. Years ago when Aizen began his plans, he was still just the lieutenant of Squad 5, and I was engaged to marry your father. His name was Saburo Kimura of the Kimura family, and my sister, your aunt, was Saki Yamamoto, and her fiancé and future husband, a man named Toshihiro Nakamura, was part of the Nakamura family. That's right Orihime, I am your aunt, the one that took care of you when your parents and older brother died. Tatsuki is your cousin, and the head captain and his wife are your grandparents. Shina said. Why? Why didn't you tell us? Orihime said, crying. For the same reason that Isin didn't tell Ichigo any of his heritage, because I was trying to protect you and the rest of my family. Orihime, when you were born in the living world your brother Sora was already a gifted Shinigami, but something happened that caused his powers weaken, though he would never talk about it, but we think it had something to do with the reason we were forced to leave the Soul Society. Shina said. What happened to make you leave us, Shina-chan? Her mother asked with tears in her eyes. Well mom, as you know, of all the noble families in the Soul Society, the Yamamoto clan is the only one with direct access to the royal realm, although the method and how this is accomplished is only known to the head of the family and his or her heir. Aizen approached my sister and me and threatened us with death and the destruction of our loved ones if we did not give him that information, so we stayed in the family compound and never left. We knew that Yamamoto Manor was the one place he could not enter without either our father's permission. I instructed father that only those who held the rank of captain allowed entry, and he agreed. The years went by and finally we got married in a private ceremony with just our families present. We were happy until the bastard attained the rank of captain, and it was time my sister and I made our move before the bastard started taking liberties. The reason we left was so Aizen could not get his hands on the information the royal family had entrusted to us. My husband and I had our closest friend spread the word that we had died. After that, we went to the world of the living, and once there we met Yoruichi, Kisuke, and Tessai, and they helped us out. We knew all along that they did not commit the crime Central 46 accused they of committing. They gave us a place to live until we found a place of our own. Kisuke eventually came up with a gigai that masked our true appearance and energy, so we could not be found by Aizen or anyone else. However, the gigais also had the unfortunate side effect of suppressing our powers so low that in sense we were human. After a while Tatsuki, you and Orihime were born in Urahara's shop. In fact, we named Mishiro, Kensei and Kisuke and Kiryu Hikifune as your godparents. The two of you always had circle of people around you that you always count on. It didn't matter if it was the Vizards, Kisuke, Yoruichi or even the Kurosakis, you always a place to go and friends to count on, and that is the way we wanted it. After a while, we finally had enough to buy homes of our own, but we needed new identities first. Tatsuki, your father, and I took the name Arasawa, and Orihime, your parents, took the name Inoue. For a few years our lives were happy, then our lives were turned upside down when the energy dampening properties of our gigai stopped functioning and Aizen found us. Your fathers and Orihime, your mother and brother, went to confront Aizen and those he sent after us and died in the process. I stayed behind with Yoruichi and Kisuke to keep the two of you safe. Aizen took from me the ones I loved most, and I will see that he pays for it as slowly and painfully as possible. Orihime, Tatsuki, I kept this information from you not because I wanted to keep you in the dark about your family, but because I knew that if Aizen knew you were alive, he would either use you against your family, kill you or both. I have lost so much already, namely my sister, my brothers and my nephew, and I could not lose the two of you as well. The two of you are the only connection to them that I have left, and I will do whatever is needed to protect you, even if it means you hate me for it later. Shina said with tears in her eyes. Slap. Tatsuki slapped her mother and said, Mom, hating you is something I could never do, but you should have told us, we had a right to know, so from now on no more keeping secrets, okay? As she and Orihime gave her a hug and thanked her for protecting them. Tika on the other hand was elated to know that one of her children was still alive and that she had grandchildren, but also sad to know that her other daughter, her two son-in-laws and grandson, were all killed by Aizen, all for the sake of his selfish lust for power. She was crying, seeking comfort in the arms of her husband when she said, My darling Shai-kun, promise me that Aizen will pay for what he has done to our family and so many others. Before he could answer, everyone felt Ichigo's reiatsu increase, and then he said, he will pay Lady Yamamoto on this, and my soul, I give you my word. Bankai. Cut the moon and rage across the heavens, Tensa Zanjetsu. I will use this very blade to cut out his heart and make him eat it, and after I kill Aizen, which is next. Anne. Shai-kun is Chika's pet name for her husband. Head Captain Yamamoto, at your earliest convenience, your granddaughters and I require your help with something. Ichigo said. And what would that be, young Ichigo? He asked. The Sauchis, we require a Sauchis. Ichigo said. Very well, young man, you shall have what it is you seek. Now as far as my two granddaughters are concerned, wait, where did they go? He said, confused only to see his wife running away with Orihime and Tatsuki flailing about behind her like two flags in the wind. Pika, I wanted to introduce myself, you know. He yelled. Introductions later, girl talk now. She yelled, and with that, they were gone. Shina-san, has your mom always been so excitable? Ichigo asked. Unfortunately, Ichigo, but what do you expect, she is a Shihoin by birth. Shina said. A Shihoin? Ichigo said, visibly shocked. Yep. She is a Shihoin. She is the sister of my great-great-great-grandfather, which makes her a great aunt to me, my children and later on to you as well. Azami said, is that okay? It's fine with me. I never had an aunt so it will probably be a lot of fun. Ichigo said. Boy, you don't know how glad I am to hear you say that. Having a new nephew around for her to drive crazy would make my life a lot less stressful. Yamamoto said. Ichigo just laughed at Yamamoto's last statement. Oh, so little Ichigo wants his mommy. A voice behind them said. Ichinai. Ani-chan. Karen and Yuzu said with tears in their eyes as the man restrained them. Naoko, let them go now and I promise I won't kill you. Ichigo said. Sure, I'll release them if you void your engagement to Yoruichi and give me what is mine. Naoko said. No. However, I will give you one last to surrender yourself. Ichigo said. Or what? Naoko asked. Or I will kill you right here. Ichigo said. Before Naoko could respond, Ichigo disappeared in flash of speed that no one could follow and reappeared next to Yoruichi with his sisters in his arms, hugging him for dear life, as if he would disappear if they let go. Why, how did you do that? Naoko asked. It's called shunpo, moron. Ichigo spat venomously. And I think it's time you left. Ichigo flexed his wrist, his sword that was once stabbed in the ground came to his hand, and he just vanished in a flash of shunpo and reappeared in front of Yoruichi, sealed his blade and said Kakugatsu no Haban 3. 6 Sudareku to Shiba. After placing Zangetsu back in his hilt with click only to turn around and see Naoko and his goons on the ground in pieces. He walked to the bodies, spat on them and said, you hurt my family or those I care about and you die. And Kakugatsu no Haban 3. 6 Sudareku to Shiba means Black Moon Blade number 3. Death in 6 strikes. Ichigo, what did you do? Yoruichi asked. I used one of Tensa Zangetsu's techniques, you see, well Zangetsu is the strongest melee attack type Zanpakuto, he is also the strongest dual type, which means his type changes between Shikai and Bankai. In his Bankai form, he is a compression type, which is why Tensa Zangetsu is so small when compared to other Bankai, because he compresses my power and his form into a small blade to enable ultra-high speed combat and maneuverability. The technique I just used was the third of Tensa Zangetsu's 6 speed-based abilities, with each one getting progressively faster than the last, but even in Bankai he retains all of his melee attack type abilities on top of his compression type abilities. Ichigo said. So what you're saying is that wasn't even as fast as you could go, Ichigo-kun. Shunsui said. Not even close. If I were to move as fast I could, there isn't a single person here fast enough to catch me, as it is I was only using a fourth of my true speed just now if that. In terms of an actual speed measurement, take the full speed of Yoruichi, Suì-Fēng, and Byakuya combined multiply that by 10, and the number you get would only equal 75% of my maximum, but that is only while in Bankai. Without Bankai, my speed is equal to Yoruichi, maybe a little faster. Ichigo said. The minute he said that, everyone's jaws hit the ground that were shocked, as there was never anyone that fast in the history of Soul Society. Royal Realm. Damn, Misaki, that's your son. Candace exclaimed. He's hot. Mina said. Misaki dried her eyes as she had been crying during the telling of Ichigo's tale and said, that's Ichigo, that's my baby boy, my little protector. With a big prideful grin on her face. Misaki, I must agree with Candace and Mina's, Ichigo is a very handsome young man, and very strong as well, he has everything I could ever ask for in a mate. I must agree as well, Misaki-chan. Neliel and Tia said as they and the fraction came out in their fully evolved forms. Neliel and Tia had no hollow holes or masks, but had newly forged Zanpakuto on their long beautiful hair that stopped just above their knees and were wearing the standard black shahakusho. We saw what happened just now between your son and the idiot. I can't say I'm surprised at the treatment he received, I would have done the same if anyone tried that with my girls. Tia said. I can't wait to meet Ichi-kun in person. Neliel said. Speaking of, your highness, when are we going to see Ichigo? Misaki asked. Actually, I'm getting ready to send someone to pick them all up right now. I just wanted to give you a chance to dry your eyes first. Wouldn't want Ichigo to see his mother for the first time in 7 years with red puffy eyes, would we? Etsu. Hikifune. I want the two of you to go and bring me the Shihoin family, the Shiba family, the Kichiki family, the Yamamoto family, the Fan family, the Kasumioji family, the Ishida family, the Vizards, and Kisu Kirihara. I also want the captains and lieutenants of the Gate 13 here at once, but leave anyone from the Amida family there. I have no desire to lay eyes on anyone from that family. The Soul King said. Yes, your highness. They exclaimed. Flashback. During the time, Ichigo was telling everyone his story down in the Seireitei, his mother and everyone else, including the Soul King and the Royal Guard, were watching the drama unfold on a monitor. I can't believe my babies went through so much pain, and it's all the fault of Aizen, Iwich and that bastard Hollow. Misaki said as she collapsed to the ground with tears in her eyes. All the women there began to comfort Misaki, and then Kanda said, "Listen to me Misaki, we will get both Aizen and Yoruichi, trust me. It's just a matter of time now, Aizen has been cut off from the Soul Society so your family is safe, and Yoruichi is still too weak to make a move, but don't worry we'll get them both." The biggest mistake either of them made was to allow their ambition to cloud their judgment, and in the end it will cost them both dearly trust me, every Quincy here knows how selfish, overconfident, and depraved Yoruichi is, and from what I hear, Aizen is no better, it will be their downfall. Never forget that we are here for you and your family. She's right Misaki-chan, we are all here for you, both Aizen and Yoruichi will pay for what they've done, and I promise you whether we carry out their punishment or Ichigo does it will be as slow and painful as we can make it. Mina said. Misaki looked up at everyone and saw that they were all in complete agreement with what Candace and Mina's just said, and after that she got up, dried her eyes and said thank you everyone. I guess just hearing my little protector telling everyone the pain he went through when I died was just a little too much for me to take. It was overwhelming to find out he went through all that and his little heart was so broken. I am so proud of him for honoring values I taught him as a child, even if he did take it to the extreme and stayed away from everyone he loved for so long, I am still proud of my little protector nevertheless. Yes he did Misaki and I have no doubt that he will protect Candace, myself and the rest of the Soul Society just as fiercely. Mina said. You have every right to be proud of him Misaki for he is an honorable young man, one that I would be proud to go into battle with. Gerard said. The other Quincy's said nothing except nod their heads in agreement with what Gerard said. Flashback end. Back in the Seireitei. Byakuya I also need you and the other captains to understand something else. You said during our fight that it did not matter if it was the execution or the Bankai I had quite the fondness for trampling upon your pride. I assure you that nothing could be further from the truth. Their traditions, values and laws that you uphold as not only a captain of the Gatei 13, a person, and head of a noble family, are what make you who you are in a manner of speaking, that is where your pride comes from. I think it is only natural that you would assume someone like me was trying to insult the values and beliefs you hold dear. The fact is that my pride comes from the beliefs and values that I was raised to believe in and taught as a child by my mother. To disregard them because you or someone else doesn't agree with them not only dishonors the rest of my family and friends, but dishonors the memory of my mother, and that is something I will not do. Ichigo said. I know Ichigo, I realize now that you are a far more honorable young man than I initially believed. I also wish to offer you and your family our condolences on behalf of myself and the Gatei 13. Byakuya said. Thank you. That means far more to my family and I than you realize. Ichigo replied. Head captain. I would really like to get started on my training now, so can you direct me to the Asauchi so I can get started? I have a lot to do and not a lot of time in which to do it. Ichigo said. Just as he was about to answer everyone felt an immense Ryatsu weigh them down and then saw a portal open up in front of them. If it's Asauchi's you want I can help with that. A voice behind them said as two people stepped forward, both wearing captain's Haori. Ichigo was instantly on guard not knowing who these two captains were he drew his sword and said, who are you? Hey calm down Ichigo I am only here to help you. Etsu said. Then answer my question. Ichigo exclaimed. I will but not at the point of the blade. Etsu said looking to Yamamoto for help in calming the boy down. Yamamoto came forward put a hand on Ichigo's shoulder and said, calm down young Ichigo he speaks the truth he is not our enemy. His name is Etsu Nameya and the Soul King gave him the title God of the Sword for the creation of the Zanpakuto. The woman with him is Kiryu Hikifune former captain of Squad 12 and Kisu Kirihara's predecessor creator of the artificial soul pill, and for this the Soul King gave her the title ruler of grain, they are both members of the Royal Guard. He said and Ichigo relaxed. Thank you Yamamoto. Etsu said. Yamamoto just nodded in reply. Now then young Ichigo, what Yamaji said is correct I am a member of the Royal Guard and our first duty is to project the royal dimension and the king. That is also why Hikifune and I are here the king wishes to see you. He also wants to see the following clans. Yamamoto, Shihoin, Fan, Shiba, Kichiki, and Kasumioji. I have also been ordered to bring Kisu Kirihara, the Vizards, the Ishida family and the captains and lieutenants of the Gatei 13, except Marichi Omida, the Soul King himself said that he has no desire to set eyes on that man. Etsu said. Okay, but why does he want to see me? Ichigo asked. That is something that the Soul King wishes to discuss in person so I cannot tell you. However, I can tell you that for you and young Ishida over there part of what he wants to discuss has to do with your family and that is all I know I'm afraid. Etsu said. You're lying. Uryu said, that isn't all you can tell us, but it is all you will tell us correct? Correct young Uryu that is all I will tell you, not because I don't want to, but because I was ordered not to. The Soul King wishes to tell you himself. Etsu said. After everyone that they were ordered to gather up was gathered, they made their way to the royal realm. On the way, Etsu struck up a conversation with Ichigo. Ichigo-chan, you do know that the being you know as Zangetsu isn't your real Zanpakuto, right? He said. Yeah, I know. I've known for quite a while actually. Ichigo replied. Oh. Since when? Etsu asked. Since I was 5. Whenever I would sleep, my subconscious mind would always go to my inner world and I would always talk to them. For the longest time, I could never remember, and then recently all that changed. When I began my training under Yoruichi, I could talk to them consciously. I found out then that Zangetsu was my hollow fused with my Shinigami power, and after what my father told me about heritage, I'm guessing the old man is the manifestation of my Quincy power. Ichigo said. Bingo. You hit the nail on the head, Ichigo-chan. Etsu said. But there is something else you should know about the old man. He looks like it which did 1000 years ago because he was part of his soul. All Quincy's have him, for he is where the wellspring of Quincy power comes from, and you will have to accept that if you are to truly master your powers. Excuse me. Not that this conversation isn't interesting, but why I am here. A female voice said as she came forward with her mother. You are here, Miss Kasumi-oji, because the Soul King wishes to speak with you and your mother. Hikifune said. What about me? A timid little girl spoke up as Ichigo promptly picked her up as he spoke for Hikifune. You little lady are here because I thought you might like to play with my sisters. While the adults talk, it would give the 3 of you something fun to do. Ichigo said as he began to tickle her and gave her a hug. Lady Kasumi-oji, your youngest is really cute, she reminds me of my own younger sisters. Thank you very much, young man. She said with a genuine smile. I didn't catch your name. My name is Ichigo. Ichigo Kurosaki Shiba. Ichigo replied. So you're a Shiba? She asked. Yes, but I only just found out because somebody was keeping it secret from me. Ichigo said, glaring at his father. Oh come on, Ichigo, I was trying to protect you and your sisters. How long are you going to hold it over my head? Isin asked. Until you get it, though, that thick skull of yours, that it isn't polite or fair for you to keep those kinds of secrets. Ichigo said. Wait, that voice. The Kasumi-oji woman said. Isin Shiba, is that you? Yes Katsu, it's me. Isin replied, not liking where this was probably heading. Slap. Katsu came up and slapped Isin across the face. Where were you? Start talking. I thought you were dead. She exclaimed as tears of joy and anger began to fill her eyes. Add something else you want to explain, or do I have to guess? Ichigo asked. Yes, I guess it's about time I got this off my dot. If what happened to your mother happened, it's entirely possible that Misaki would be Uryu's mother and Katsu would be yours and your sisters. I was engaged to marry Katsu before I left, but after what Aizen did and after what happened to your mother, I was left without powers and thus no way home. I was broken up about it, sure, but even if I had powers, I made a commitment to your mom and I couldn't just walk out on her. Beside, what do you think Aizen would have done if I walked out on your mother and went back home? He would have killed her, or worse, did to her and our kids what he did to the Vizards all those years ago, and I could not let that happen. Isin said. I guess I'll forgive you, Isin, since your reason was noble, but if you had let me know, I would have come to you in the human world. Besides, I have been aware of Aizen for quite some time. I know of his Zanpakuto and its abilities, and my Zanpakuto can negate them all. I am also twice as strong as Aizen, so I can take care of myself. Katsu said, by the way, what happened to your wife? Aizen sent a hollow named Grand Fisher after her and my son, and she sacrificed herself so Ichigo could live. However, he isn't the only one responsible for her death. The Quincy King stole her powers that night during her fight with Grand Fisher, and the result, she died. Ichigo spent the next 7 years blaming himself for her death and staying away from everyone he cared about in order to protect us. I understand now that if I had told Ichigo and his sisters about their heritage the moment my powers started coming back, then maybe my children would not have gone through the pain that they went through. I made a promise to his mother that would protect them and keep it secret until they were ready to hear the truth, but being the selfish bastard that he is, Aizen forced my hand, and I had to tell them, even though none were ready to hear it yet. Isin said. Isin, you and your family have the condolences of the Kasumi-oji family. We are deeply sorry for your loss. Katsu said. Ichigo was busy playing with Yoruichi when her big sister Rei came over and walked beside them. Yoruichi-chan, are you having fun playing with your new friend? Rei asked. Hi. Rei Wani-sama, he is so much fun. Yoruichi said. Why don't you go play with his sisters so he and I can talk? Rei said. Okay. Yoruichi said with a big toothy grin. Ichigo, I can't imagine what it was like to go through the pain that you and your sisters went through. I am just as surprised to see that you and your sisters are handling it so well despite knowing the truth. If I were in your position, I couldn't. I probably would have continued to shut myself off from the world, so I admire your strength a great deal. Rei said. Thank you, Rei, your compliment means a lot. Ichigo said. Hey Etsu. How much longer till we reach the Soul King? Ichigo asked. About a minute. Why? Are you not enjoying your chat with that beautiful young lady standing next to you? Etsu asked. On the contrary, I am quite enjoying my conversation with her. I am just a little anxious to hear what the Soul King wants, that's all. I have never been face to face with royalty before. Ichigo said. This got a laugh from everyone. Ichigo, don't you know that being a Shiba makes you royalty? Kukaku said. Really? I did not know that. I guess because I wasn't raised with formalities or here in the Soul Society, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Ichigo said. Just then, the exit to the Chikamen opened before them, and they stepped out into the throne room of the Soul King's palace. What is this place? Ichigo asked. It is my palace, young Ichigo. The Soul King said as he seated himself on the throne. Everyone began to kneel before the king before he stopped them and said, stop. This is an informal meeting, so bowing or kneeling is not required, certainly not from Ichigo. I have watched you for a long time, young man, and never has one made me so proud. You not only followed and abided by the values you were taught as a child, but you also risked your own life for the sake of another, regardless of the possible consequences you could incur personally, and in the process you brought to light 3 traitors in our midst, so I thank you. But that is only part of the reason that I brought you, Uryu, and the rest of your families here. Then if you don't mind, why else are we here? I don't mean to sound rude, but I have a hospital to run. Raiken said. I think we can answer that question best. A voice said as the Ishida, Kurosaki, and Shiba families come out from behind the Soul King, followed lastly by Masaki Kurosaki and Kani Ishida. Mom? Ichigo and Uryu exclaimed with a shaky voice. A minute or so later, Ichigo shunpoed into his mother's waiting arms, hugging her for dear life, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably because he crying, just happy to see his mom again. Uryu and Raiken did the same with Kani. Both Ichigo and Uryu were unable to stop the tears that were flowing. Everyone got another surprise in the form of Hisana Kichiki, or as she was known now, Hisana Shiba, coming out from behind a curtain and walking towards Rukia and Byakuya with her father and mother Hitachi and Chiyoko Shiba following right behind her. Both Rukia and Byakuya were in shock. As Isen's initial shock wore off, he went over and hugged his parents. Heard Masaki call him over, telling him to bring Yuzu and Karen with him. When Isen did as asked Masaki, she gave him a hug, and a deep, as well as gave her daughters who were already crying each a hug, and told her husband and children who missed her terribly how much she missed them, loved them, and that she was proud of them. This admission provoked another round of tears from her Isen and her children. Annie was not faring much better with Raiken and Uryu, and neither was Hisana with Rukia and Byakuya. Yoruichi was standing next to her parents and Suì-Fēng, just waiting her turn to give Masaki a hug, but when she could not wait any longer, she turned into her cat form, jumped onto Masaki's shoulder and nuzzled into her neck. I missed you so much, Masaki, we all did. Yoruichi said, crying the whole time. I cried myself to sleep for 3 weeks when you died, and Ichigo had it worse than me. He shut himself off from everyone he cared about, his adorable little heart just could not take it. His heart didn't just break, it shattered into thousands of pieces the day you died. Only recently was he able to start putting the pieces back together again, but it was difficult. Well, at least he has 3 very beautiful women that he loves helping him. Masaki said, which made Yoruichi nuzzle into her neck even more. The Soul King cleared his to get everyone's attention. I suppose you are wondering why you're here. The reason is simple, you are here to witness me appointing my successor, and to find out why individuals who should be dead are standing before you. The Soul King said. The reason why long-dead members of the Ishida and Kurosaki families are here is because I removed them from hell, brought them here and restored their stolen powers so that they could help fight against Iwich in the future, but I also liberated Sternritters from the army of Iwich to assist in the same thing. You may come out now. The Soul King said. Yamamoto, I am sure that you know these individuals from the battle 1000 years ago, do you not? The king asked. Indeed I do. I can't remember their names because it has been so long, but I do recognize their faces. Yamamoto said. Then you can work with them? The king asked. As long as they do not endanger the Soul Society, then yes, I can work with them. However, if they ever endanger the Soul Society, I will feed their souls to Zankai no Tachi, and that will be the end of them. Yamamoto said. None of the Sternritters said anything, as they could understand his hostility. But then we can get started. The king said. Ichigo Kurosaki, come forward. The king bellowed. Yes, sir. Ichigo said. From this day forth I proclaim you my heir. As of now you are the crown prince of the Soul Society and will remain so until you defeat Aizen, at which time you shall inherit my title and become the new Soul King. The Soul King said. Ichigo was completely dumbstruck, and rightly so. Are you sure you want me to succeed you? I mean, only just found out about my heritage today. Ichigo said. It is precisely because of your heritage that I have chosen you. You are what is called a transcendent being, which means your power goes beyond that of Soul Reapers, Quincy's and Hollows combined. There is no one other than you to take my place. Well, no one I feel I can trust with the responsibility anyway. The king said. Again, why choose me? Ichigo asked. Because young Ichigo, I cannot pee my power onto anyone other than a transcendent being. To do so could risk the destruction of the Soul Society and every world connected to it. That's over 50 billion innocent lives. But there is another reason, the king said. Which is? Ichigo asked. I am dying, Ichigo. I have about 6 months left alive, and if I die without a successor, the Soul Society and every world connected to it will be destroyed, and that is something that cannot happen, the king said. Wait, I thought the Soul King was eternal. How can you die dying? Ichigo asked. There was a time that was true, however I have been using my power to maintain the seal that I placed upon my children after they were banished for trying to take my power for themselves. I have also been working tirelessly to put the reincarnation cycle on an autopilot of sorts so my successor would not have to worry about it. I have also created a new dimension in which the royal family would reside called the Noble Plane. The royal family as well as all the noble families in this room will reside there so that new squads in the Seireitei can be created to shore up our defenses for the future, the king said. What do I need to do? Ichigo asked. Nothing except drink what is in this cup, the king said. What is it? Ichigo asked. It is my blood, but it also contains all of the Oken, as well as 99% of my power and abilities, including the longevity that goes with being king, the king said as Ichigo drank it down. What aren't you telling me? Ichigo asked. Your mother told me you were smart. Yes, there is something I haven't told you. Your mother and I have already picked out the women you are to marry. Fortunately, you know quite a few of them. 3 of them you started sleeping with before you even came to the Soul Society, the king said. When your name is called, please come forward. Candace Catnip, Minas Macallan, Reika Sumioji, Lisi Adamaru, Ranjiku Matsumoto, Rukia Kichiki, Retsu Anohana, Kukaku Shiba, Yoruichi Shihoin, Sholen Fan, Orihiminoe Yamamoto, Tatsuki Arasawa Yamamoto, Tia Haribal, and Eliel Tua Dursavink, the king said. Ichigo's heart was in his dot. Excuse me sir, why so many? Not that I'm complaining, they're all exceedingly beautiful women, I was just wondering, Ichigo said. That's a valid question, why are we all marrying him? Lisa asked. Well Lisa, Ichigo the Soul King has always had several wives at one time for 2 reasons. 1 to increase the size of the royal family. 2 to help the king do his job and watch over all the dimensions for which Soul Society is responsible. The Soul King cannot do it all himself and is a plus. Why not be married to such beautiful women? Unlike in the world of the living, polygamy isn't taboo here, the king said. Kukaku Shiba, before you start to panic, let me just say that the reason I included you is that, as everyone here knows, there are times in the history of Soul Society that cousins of the same clan are forced to marry in order to rebuild the clan and keep the bloodline of the clan pure. Since the only living members of the Shiba clan are you, Ganju, Isen, Ichigo, Yuzu, Karen, Hasana and Isen's and your parents, I figured marrying you off to Ichigo was the sensible solution, the king said. Oh, I don't have a problem with it, I figured it was something like that anyway. Ichigo is a very handsome young man after all, Kukaku said. What I would like to know is why Hasana has the name Shiba, Kukaku said. Oh, that is quite simple. The day Hasana died, instead of letting her enter the cycle of reincarnation, I plucked her soul from the Seireitei just as it left her body and implanted it inside of one of Gyuko Shiba's eggs. When she and her husband Hitachi decided to have another child after they thought Isen had died, I guess you could say that they hit the jackpot one night and they were blessed with beautiful baby Hasana, who later became a very powerful soul reaper in her own right, the king said. Isen walked over to his new little sister, gave her a hug and said, welcome to the family, little sister. I am so sorry I was not around until now, but I will make it up to you on this, I promise. Hasana was shocked to hear her older brother speak, but she accepted the hug and gave one of her own in return. Isen Shiba. Before we get to the remainder of our business, there is something else that needs to be addressed. Masaki is aware of your prior engagement to Katsu Kasumioji and said that she is willing to share you with her if Katsu herself is willing. By that I mean that according to royal family tradition, your marriage to Masaki never officially ended, so while you are still married to her, you are free to marry Katsu if you so desire, the king said. That is something that Masaki, Katsu and I will have to discuss privately. However, we will give you our answer once we do, Isen said. That is fine, but be warned the decision must be made and carried out within the next 3 months, the king said. Why the next 3 months? Isen asked. Because after that I will be too weak to officiate it and it will not be a legal royal wedding, the king said. That said, Ichigo will have his ceremony in 2 weeks' time. I hope this is acceptable to you, Ichigo. Fine by me, Ichigo said. Besides, I can use those 2 weeks to get to know my future brides better. But I do have one question, Ichigo said. What would that be, young man? The king asked. You don't expect me to sit on my hands and do nothing? Well, Central 46 in their arrogance does what the hell they want, do you? Because if that's the case, I'll abdicate right here, Ichigo said. Ichigo. That was rude of you to say, now apologize right now. His mother shouted. No. That is quite alright, Misaki, your boy does make a valid point. To answer your question, Ichigo, I do not expect you to sit on your hands while Central 46 practically gets away with murder. I expect you to rule, and you may do so any way you wish. In all honesty, putting those arrogant fools in charge was a big mistake, one that I have regretted ever since. The reason I did not change anything is that I was waiting for you so that you could start your rule the right way, your way. If you wish to get rid of C46, then do so. It is as of this moment your decision. However, I would suggest keeping them, just reduce their rights and authority. For all their arrogance and blunders, they did do some good. I suggest looking at the good they've done before you make your final decision. The king said. I apologize for the way I phrased my question, your highness. It's just that people that I care about a great deal were exiled or almost executed because of their arrogance and stupidity, and just wanted to get my point across that as king, I will no longer tolerate it. Ichigo said. That's quite alright, Ichigo, you are putting the needs of others before your own. That is the primary reason I chose you. You not only continue to follow the teachings of your parents, but you are able to see the big picture and realize that the needs of the many are far more important than needs of the few or the one, and that, young Ichigo, is a requirement of a good king. The Soul King said. Now, so we can hurry this along and show Ichigo and his future brides to their room for the evening. Yoruichi to come forward. Young Ryu, there is a room in the palace that you and your father can train in to restore your powers. The room is constructed from spiritually tempered silver. Once your powers have returned, you and your father drink these. They are vials of my blood. It will strengthen you and activate your letter as it did with Ichigo. All Quincy's have letters associated with their soul, but to activate them, you have to drink the blood of Iwich so that he can carve it into your soul, but doing so would give him the ability to use the same technique against you that killed your mothers. However, by drinking my blood, that process is bypassed and your letter is activated. You are then able to access all the powers that go with it, while blocking Iwich's access to your soul at the same time. Ryu, you and Ichigo both have the same letter as Iwich himself. Ichigo, yours stands for the Almighty like Iwich himself, and Ryu, yours stands for the antithesis, which you can redirect any damage you receive back at your opponent. Now, before we all get some rest for the evening, your mother and I chose your fiancé as well. We have chosen one of two women for you marry. You may enter, ladies. The first one is Bambietta Basterbean, and the second is Giselle Jewel. You may choose one and marry in the world of the living, or you may choose both and marry here in the Soul Society. The choice is yours. Since that is done, I am going to bed. You are all welcome to stay the night. Ichigo, the rest of your training starts in the morning. I suggest you get a good night's sleep. You are going to need it. Good night, everyone. The royal guard will show you to your quarters. The king said as he left and went to his quarters for the evening. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the FANFICLOVER 2017 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.